Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 136. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I am Sean Whalen, Dr. Norge on the comics forums, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. Sometimes I feel like everyone thinks I'm a tarted up teenager in a short skirt and a cape with something to prove. So says the sensei of the Whatnot Segulin.
How's it going, eh? Okay, yeah, Supergirl
number 34.
Yes.
I changed things up a little bit this episode because we had an interview with Jamal Igle that was fantastic, talking about Supergirl, and not just Supergirl, but the whole Superman family of books right now and what's going on in there. And then we had this wonderful interview with Marc Nobleman about his book Boys of Steel. So I kind of changed the lineup a little bit for this particular episode to get both of those interviews on there. If you noticed, the past couple weeks we've been doing a little bit shorter episodes. We've been going around the 2.5 to 3 hour mark. But what we're trying to do is come back a little bit sooner. I released the last episode on Monday night, and now this episode I'm going to be releasing on Sunday night. We're trying to get back maybe a little bit sooner, but make sure that we keep an episode out every week. I had that issue where I was sick, and we've had Jim that's been sick recently, and we really wanted to make sure that we set ourselves a pace where Jim and I can record in such a way that we're ahead of the game and make sure to get out the episodes to you in a timely manner. So we switched things up just a little bit for that purpose, and hopefully you're enjoying these episodes. We're going to be back this week on Friday with an episode with Terror Titans, with Trinity, and either some Speeding Bullets or Top Bullets. It depends on which segment we get to record this week. We already got a couple segments recorded that we were going to put on this episode. I just didn't have time to get to them because I want to get this episode out to you in a timely fashion, but you're going to be getting those segments a little bit later in the week. We're back a little bit sooner with another show for you guys. So I hope you're enjoying this a little bit more frequent Raging Bullets. I also want to give a sweetest day shout out to my wife. I was originally going to release this on Saturday night, and when I had announced it on the show, I wasn't thinking that was Sweetest Day, which is when my wife and I originally got engaged years ago. So I definitely spent Saturday night with my wife, and I want to thank all of you for your patience, but I also want to thank my wife for her patience, because she has been so wonderful to me with the fact that I do this podcast at all. So just a little shout out to Mariah. She's awesome. Our sponsor for this episode is DCBService.com, where you can pick up Supergirl number 36, the new Krypton issue, written by Sterling Gates, art by Jamal Igle and Keith Champagne, with a cover by Joshua Middleton. There's a variant cover also by Chris Sprouse. New Krypton, Part 8. In the aftermath of Action Comics number 872, the city of Kandor is rocked to its core, and Supergirl angrily unleashes her full power. You're going to want to check this out. It's regularly $2.99, 40% off, only $1.79. And that variant edition is also available for $6 if you want to get that as well. Action Comics and Superman are both available at the same price as regularly $2.99, 40% off, only $1.79, both with variant covers, also available for $6. So it's great if you want to get any variant covers, you want to pick up the issues of all of them, save them at that discount. That 40% off is fantastic, especially now that we've got the triangle numbering. This is a great chance to save money. If you're previously reading only Action Comics, but now you're jumping on board all of them, save some money doing it and go about this way. So this is fantastic. Whatever your shipping preferences, your bag and boarding preferences, DCBService.com accommodates your collecting needs. Don't forget our in-stock trades book of the month for October, chosen by Simulated Stereo, is Doom Patrol Volume 2, The Painting That Ate Paris trade paperback, written by Grant Morrison with art by Richard Case and John Nyberg, with a cover by Brian Boland. It's a second collection from superstar writer Grant Morrison and his groundbreaking run on Doom Patrol. Collecting issues 26 to 34, this collection includes the rise of the legendary Brotherhood of Dada, the only team of super foes ever strange enough to rival the Doom Patrol itself. In-Stock Trades remains your source for your collected edition needs. Thank you for your sponsorship, In-Stock Trades, and DCBService.com. Visit RagingBullets.com to check out show news updates, listener-generated content such as the Life in the Gutter blog, and a regular blog called Bulleteer Rants, which is basically all the listeners getting together and just kind of posting their own articles as they feel like it. It doesn't have to be like a weekly thing. That Life in the Gutter blog I'm really, really enjoying. She just posted a brand new one on Chloe Sullivan, and talking about Chloe in Smallville, talking about how Chloe could fit into the DC Universe and how that is something that really drove her to the books, and how this character could make a nice transition because of how well she's been crafted. So it's a great blog, so definitely go and check out her blog. Mandy's doing a great job on that every week, so I'm really excited. Jim, we have a voicemail line, and we love having your comments be part of the show. The last 2 episodes, we've had some great voicemails that have generated some interesting discussion. Our voicemail number is 1-440-388-4434. And please feel free to call that because we love having you a part of the show. Your comments add something to our episodes. So we've got that on this episode. Jim, what kind of a podcast are we?
Well, Sean, we are a spoiler podcast. We go in depth in the plot lines, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're reviewing. So if we're talking about something you haven't read, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
And without further ado, Jim, let's get people right into the episode.
Calling a donut.
Hey guys, it's Al Sedano, Rebus02 on the forums. How you been? Just listened to the most recent episode and thought it was great. Got a few comments about Superman Beyond and Legion of Three Worlds I wanted to throw into the mix. First of all, on Superman Beyond, your question about the 2 Ultramen, there are 2 of them actually. There is the one who was from Earth 3 with the Crime Society that appeared, I think, following the 52 and Infinite Crisis. And then there also was one that Grant Morrison had created in the JLA Earth 2 hardcover that came out around the same time he was writing JLA. And this was the Crime Syndicate, and they came from an Earth on the Antimatter universe, same as Cord. So my reason thinking is always, if he and Ultraman are able to touch and punch each other, it's the Ultraman from Earth 3. If they can't because Ultraman is antimatter, then it is the Ultraman from the Earth 2 hardcover. So there's 2 of them. Now, also, talk about the Legion of Three Worlds, which I agree with you guys, was great. A few things I noticed in that. First of all, in the beginning, the old elderly couple that Superboy Prime kills is the same couple from the Action Comics story. They even make a reference to killing an alien and burying them in their farm, which was the alien baby that was killed in the very first part of the Action Comics story. In fact, their names are even very similar to John and Martha, hence John and Martha Kent. Also, when they're in the Legion Museum, there's a couple of cool things I saw in the background. There's a picture of the Tangent Superman. That's the African-American guy next to all pictures of Superman. He is the Superman currently appearing in the Tangent Superman's Reign. If anyone be reading that. Also, there's a picture of Superwoman next to Supergirl. Superwoman was a character from pre-Crisis Universe created by Elliot S. Maggin in the Superman Miracle Monday novel, and then he started including her in the comics. She's a future descendant of Jimmy Olsen, Kristen Wells, and came back in time and ended up, of course, somehow getting powers through the stuff she brought with her and becoming Superwoman. She only appeared a few times, and the last time she really appeared was in the Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. So I'm either hoping that means she'll be making an appearance again, or maybe one of the new Kryptonians from the new Krypton story will end up being an actual hero, maybe even staying around, which I think would be a very cool idea. Also, a couple of things. You guys about Mon-El and his anti-lead serum. Usually there was pretty much a permanent serum that kept him safe all the time, unless, of course, they needed some kind of plot device to get him out of the story, and then someone figured out a way to reverse it. But for the most part, he never didn't need regular booster shots. Also, I believe in the Legion now they're using this as a whole new timeline, because there's a lot of things that did and didn't happen in the original timeline that they're using. For instance, the Legion, at least, knew about R.J. Brand being a Durlan and knew about him being Chameleon Boy's father, but they seemed to be as shocked as everyone else when he turned into a Durlan when he died. So I'm assuming things are mostly the same as in the original timeline, but different, which is the way they seem to be doing with Superman and Batman, and I'm loving that. So I'm fine with that. And also, you would ask about Polar Boy becoming a member of the Legion after joining the subs, and the Legion Substitute Heroes. And in fact, he did join the Legion itself in issue 15 or 16 of the Baxter series. All right, well, get off now because I don't want to leave too long a message. I don't know how long these can be, and I don't want to ramble on forever and bore everyone else when they want to listen to you guys. So keep up the good work, and hope to talk to you guys again soon, and hope to see you soon. Take care.
Thank you for the comments on the 2 Ultramen, because
Yeah.
I was like trying to figure out like how is that working? Why is he sometimes able to touch him? I didn't even think of the fact that yes, there would be, because I've read the Earth 2. Did you read that yet? The Grant Morrison?
Yeah.
Which is so we actually have an Earth 2 in our universe, but then there is also in the multiverse in Earth 3 that it makes your head hurt.
Boom.
Yeah, but
There's my head
that's one of the things I love about the multiverse is there is it actually is a rational explanation to the irrational.
It makes sense.
It does make sense, actually. I'm the couple from Action
Yeah.
Comics. I did remember that it was that couple. I don't know why you and I didn't reference it at the time, but that it was funny that they got their own in the end. It's actually one of those hoorah moments for Superboy Prime. And he was the one. He drove such a nice distance to come and see us for our luncheon at the Geek Brunch, and it was really nice. We got to hang with him over at Dave and Buster's out there, so we had a good old time hanging out and chatting comics, and then playing some games, and shot a whole bunch of stuff. So it was fun. So Al, always good to hear from you, and keep the comments coming.
Yeah, and it was funny with that Superwoman. I thought that was Lois in costume, in like a Superwoman costume, because if you remember from the All-Star Superman, when he temporarily gave her some powers,
but she didn't have the mask on and everything like that. Remember, she wore a outfit that was more crafted to her, but her face was showing and everything.
Oh, okay.
She had a different outfit.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm already.
So it was a different Superwoman. I know the Superwoman he's referring to.
Oh,
so.
okay.
And I think that Superwoman has popped up again later in different other Universal type stories that have passed in more current continuity. I think we've seen that one pop up, but more in like I don't want to say Elseworlds, but stories where you kind of see different
Other Earths and
that
whatnot.
type of thing.
Oh,
So,
okay.
I don't know. I might be wrong. I've definitely seen her before, but so it was interesting. So thanks for that. Actually, that's one of the things that I love about this is kind of the immediate feedback on those segments where you can add a little something to the discussion.
And our next review will be of Supergirl number 34. The writer is Sterling Gates, pencils by Jamal Igle, inks by Keith Champagne, colors by Neil Rufino, letterer Rob Lay, the cover by Joshua Middleton, associate editor Nachi Castro, with editor Matt Idelson. And, of course, we are being joined by the amazingly talented Jamal Igle.
Jamal, welcome back to the show.
Thanks. Once again, thanks for having me.
Hey, anytime.
Really appreciate it. And you guys taking the time to have me on Raging Bullets.
Opportunity to see you at the CGS Super Show, and you had the preview pages of
Right.
Supergirl, and it was without the dialogue, so you had to. It was really interesting to see this kind of laid out without the dialogue, and then actually to read the story afterwards. You really are an amazing visual storyteller, because it was nice to be able to see the dialogue matched up, and how much of it I was able to figure out from just taking a look at the pages as well.
Thank you very much.
How did you get involved in Supergirl? I mean, this is a huge run, and I'm thrilled for you because this is big.
The whole story, basically, it's kind of funny. I've been sort of chatting back and forth with Jeff Johns on his message board on Comic Block, and I'm a big fan of his. I'm a huge fan of his. Anything that he writes, I'll buy. So I still spend money, like on Wednesdays. They send me the box, and I can't wait to get like a copy of Action or a copy of Green Lantern. I have to buy it before, from the shop when it comes out. So basically, I went on Comic Block, and I Jeff had written me a very complimentary note, and I wrote him back saying, basically, who do I have to kill to work with you? Literally, that's exactly what I wrote.
Nice.
So he just said, send me a PM, and we traded phone numbers, and that's how it got started, actually. We were actually talking about doing something else together, but what had happened was, at the same time, Matt Idelson was putting together some samples of some pencilers that they liked and wanted to get onto Superman books. And apparently he attached my samples. There was 3 people that he had picked, and with nobody's names attached to any of the samples. And Jeff immediately picked out my work and said, yeah, this is Jamal. I want to work with him. So it was serendipity, actually. Just, good timing, and it just sort of worked out that way.
And what an exciting time to be on board this book, because, the Superman titles in general are going in there. And I'm ready for Kara to really, step up. This is because I've been reading her book ever since she came back in Superman Batman, then her solo series. Right. And she's been a character really who we've seen her journey as this really kind of awkward teenager trying to find herself in this world because she didn't have the upbringing of Clark. And now it's like with this issue, it really was for me everything at this point that I was ready for from her.
Right. But, the thing about this issue, which I have to say it was, so superbly written by Sterling, it's a nice single character moment. You get to see every side of her personality for once. Because she always came, to me, like looking back at the other issues, no offense to Joe Kelly or to Jeff Loeb or to any of the other writers who worked on the book, she always just sort of seemed to come off as just sort of this one-note character. She was either really, really angry or really, really bitchy. And there wasn't any in-between the two. You get to see, with 34, you get to see, I think, a more fully fleshed out version of Kara than you've seen in a long time. And I think I know, just from the issues that I've done already and the one that I'm working on right now, you're going to see an intense emotional range from her. Just, I really don't want to give anything away for anybody, but by the time New Krypton is done with, you're going to be seeing Kara in an entirely different light.
Very cool.
Cool, man. Outstanding.
This issue is kind of a prelude to that type of thing happening with her, though, because it's really nice in this issue. I found her very accessible in this issue, because you get to see her through some moments where she's really trying to drum up some confidence in the wake of the way that she's being really smeared by the media, and it really made me feel sympathetic towards her as a character.
Cat Grant is really just going out of her way to make Kara's life as miserable as possible. And we will be getting into the whole thing as we go along. I personally think Cat should just back off a little bit. I mean, Kara's a good kid,
Yeah.
She's trying.
But it fits today. This is a very contemporary, very today story.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that with the way that the media tends to hound celebrities, I'm surprised that there isn't an outlet in the DCU that's more concerned with taking shots at superheroes than they are. I mean, I think there should be what Kat is doing with Kara with the Supergirl articles at the Daily Planet. In my mind, should logically lead to sort of the superhero version of TMZ. I think that would be just something like a nice little fun, even if it's like a humorous miniseries, I think it would be something fun to do.
Oh, yeah.
I tell you, I'd buy that. That'd be kind of...
I would, too. I really would.
But I think it would harken back to the days of stuff like Damage Control. Where something with you could do it with a real sense of humor. It doesn't have to be as dour, because we need those things. We need those things in comics still. I mean, it's cool. I love Final Crisis. I love what Grant and what JG are doing on the book. Final Crisis Revelations, Legion of Three Worlds. But everything right now is just so dire. And I think at some point we're going to hit that crest where you will be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And that brighter, slightly happier DCU that Dan promised will come through.
Well, and even so, you got to look at balance, too, because you got to figure your average reader is not reading one title. You're reading a stack of titles, whether it's 5 books to 25 books, whatever your stack looks like. You're still going to be reading more than one title, and there's a certain balance that you want in your reading anyway. While you're reading something like you're saying where there's that dire thing going on, I like to have a book that makes me smile too. Take me through the full emotional range and have a good time like that. So
that's one of the reasons why I like Blue Beetle. I think Blue Beetle is a prime example of being able to do fun superheroics.
And it so totally fits like that. It's just a great accessible book and a great accessible read that, Jim, you always talk about palate cleansers, and that's what they are. It's a fun book that just kind of makes you smile. And sometimes, depending on your day, sometimes you just need that.
That's true. That's very, very true. That would definitely be... That and Ultimate Spider-Man are like two of my palate cleansers. And sometimes Invincible, but I think Invincible tends to, not to get too off the DC track, I think Invincible tends to take itself a little too seriously as opposed to when the series first started. I think it was a little bit more fun before. Now I think it's a little bit more like everything's a little bit more dire and depressing.
Yeah, I don't know that everything needs to head that way. I think it's nice to have like a little balance out there.
I agree with you. I'm always been a believer that conflict creates drama, but different types of conflict, and it can always have to be life-threatening conflict. You can have humorous conflict as well, creating your drama and adding to the drama and adding to the story and adding to the pathos of the character. And, like you said, giving you that balance, lightening the mood sometimes, and, you need that.
One thing I particularly liked about this issue was also the fact that, in a really great way, it's an incredible leap on for anybody that hasn't read Supergirl. You can jump on this issue and you get a flavor for all the people she's interacted with in her time since she's been around, what those relationships are like today, what those relationships have meant to her, and really she's really covered a lot of ground in the DCU.
This is true. This is very, very true. And especially in a couple of ways, actually reestablishing some of the relationships that she's had, especially with the Titans. And I think that was something that kind of went the wayside for a long time. And now that we're kind of picking up those threads again and having her have those ties to Wonder Girl and having her have those ties to Robin and the Titans again, I think that's going to be very important down the line as well.
I also like, too, how that relationship, just chatting about that relationship, is shown in this book to have evolved as the characters have, because none of the characters are really the same as they were when she was on the Titans, in the sense that they've all had their own type of turmoil and hardships and things like that, and they actually are all brought about in this in a very neat way that fit the situation with her. When she came in, and I mean, we might as well, I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, Jim, but when she was in the Batcave with Robin, and he's talking about Batman being off the grid. It's great to see that this is, right then and there we got a time placement of this. This is taking place at some point in time during RIP, but then you get this wonderful, amazing moment where Robin hands off a piece of the past with Connor, and it's kind of his way of saying, I really see where you are and how you've matured. Here's something that I'd love to give you that's... for Robin to give up Connor's glasses to this girl, it's really his way of saying, you have come a long way, and here's something special that I think you should have. And it's really, I thought, a show of respect from Robin towards her in a very cool moment.
No, you're absolutely right. I think it's a very powerful moment, actually, because if you know the history going back to Young Justice between Tim and Connor, then you know how big a deal it was for him to give Kara Connor's glasses.
And his struggle to bring him back, even, he just so for him this is, and that moment I was just, wow, really, really cool, and just to me it added something to her.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah,
and I also like that he stuck with his "I don't do secret identities" thing, because they had the Miss Martian came up to him and asked him in Titans, and he said, "No, I don't do that, but Oracle can take care of you." And it was a nice consistency that we're seeing type of stuff in Trinity. We're seeing in a lot of the Titans the Titans titles. There's this constant flow through of everyone, and it's not like this is a different Robin than what I would see in Teen Titans. So that was a really cool thing.
Well, we do try to pay attention to continuity in spite of what some people might think.
This book, I mean, really, this is for anybody who's complaining about continuity. Pick up this issue and look through it. There's not a mistake in it.
Yeah, they did a great job. We could really see you're having fun with this right off the bat. When you have that little Post-it note on the bottom, Perry, please okay this before 10 a.m. Jamal. I read that and I laughed out loud, man.
You know what? I didn't think that was going to... It's in... If you look at the pencils, I did actually write that on the Post-it in the pencils. I didn't know if it was going to make it in or not, but I was very happy to see that when I got the pages, when I got the Leonard proof back for the pages that they.
I love how the Post-it covers up the JAM too in James. Because I almost want to lift up the Post-it and look underneath. Does it say Jamal or James Olsen? But it looks great, and I got to be honest with you. Your photo's much better than whatever stock photo they were going to pull in. I really like that shot of Supergirl. It was like a nice little opening.
I have to tell you guys that I've probably been working harder on Supergirl in terms of just trying to vary the types of storytelling that I'm doing with each issue. You'll see that when you guys get issue 35, that I'm experimenting again a little bit more than I have been. I'm trying to really just ratchet up the storytelling as well, because there's no way with comic book storytelling, there's no way to make it entirely seamless. You're always going to need those jumps in time between the panels. And that's one of the wonderful things that we do as readers, is we're able to make those connections in our heads. So we have that linear flow through that goes through every scene. But I'm trying as hard as I can to just make sure that things are a little bit tighter storytelling-wise, so you have those beats, those natural kind of flowing in moments in with each panel, so that it does read more like a movie than a comic book.
And I tell you, we are getting some great just facial and emotional expressions in this work. Like, we have Kara on that cover with her. She's got like that rage type thing, but we learn it's really not rage. She's just in a hurry to save their lives. You flip it in, you see Lois and Clark kind of defending her, and you have that little nerdiness of Clark, and that that honesty, and it just ringing through. And then Kat, I tell you, when Kat was standing in the doorway, I was like, all right, Jamal. That was just a pure, sexy moment with her. You had that great pose with her. I was just like, man, that is some outstanding drawing
but
there.
not only is she sexy, but she's powerful and scary.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because as this all continues on, you've got her at first with this little smile on her face, but as the discussion starts and you start seeing her face change as she's getting into it, she is on the hunt. She's on the warpath.
They're trying to kill her story, and she's not going to let that happen.
Oh.
I love that. That was just, you see the claws come out of the cat, and she's swinging. I was like, oh, cool.
Well, newspaper work's very competitive, too, so you would figure like this, if her story gets pushed back and killed, so does her name. And that's a big problem in that. So,
and the article's a big deal for her. It's sort of her coming out party, almost, because she's been gone from the planet for so long. One of the things that I really wanted to play with, especially in that opening sequence, is you notice she's holding the Frappuccino iced latte cup, and she's sort of playing with the straw and just kind of playing with the cup in a couple of panels. And then when things get really serious, she puts the cup down on the table. And then when she goes back into like flirty cat mode, she's sipping her drink again. And that was like just little touches, stuff like that is like the kind of stuff that I'm trying to do now, is try to give it more of a natural feel. Again, just trying to add more to the storytelling.
I'm going to be honest with you. When you're talking about the coffee cups, I also noticed when Jimmy was bringing in the coffee, and we see Clark later bringing the coffee cups to when he goes to meet with Kara. One of the things that I really liked about that is it dawned on me, because I read this again today after work, just to have it fresh in my head again for when we were going to be chatting about this. And as I was looking at it today, I came to work with coffee. And lunch today, we were all, tired and all that. I mean, I'm a teacher, but I mean, it's, same thing. Anybody in all of our jobs, we're all moving around and that type of thing. It's amazing nowadays with your Starbucks and your Arabicas and things like that, and your just different coffee places, that I left halfway through the day, and I came back with like 8 coffees because everybody wanted coffee when I went out. And it just seems, that is a very today thing that at any point in time in the day, you're going to see people with coffee thermoses. They've been carrying around with them and that type of, especially in an office environment like this.
Oh, yeah. It's a very beverage-heavy issue.
I'm so glad you said that, Sean, because I was worried you were going to say, yeah, and I was playing with the straw and being flirtatious with it. I was worried that was going to come out of your mouth.
Yeah. And I'm no longer teaching now. There's all kinds of ethics problems.
The Supergirl fight with Silver Banshee. That was one of those just really cool blend of nice artwork and a nice story kind of meshing going along when you're, there's sometimes when I'm looking at an action sequence, I'm like, yeah, it's the artwork that's really cool. Then you have the artwork, oh, look at the story. Oh, and you guys had just a beautiful blend throughout that entire fight sequence with her. I was wondering how much is like scripted with you? Like, do this, this, and this. How much is it? Is it you guys just collaborating? How did that go through with like the layout of this?
Well, you know what? With Sterling is actually really descriptive, and he has a really clear sense of what he wants as far as how each scene should be played out, and like little touches and everything. And I would say 98% of what you see in this issue was in Sterling's script. So, and even more so, like this is his first issue. It's a 22-page comic. He turned in a 40-page script, which I had never seen. He got really he went into the history of the two baseball teams, the Monarchs and the Meteors, and the fact that this was a crosstown rivalry game. It was a Subway Series game. It was tied up. This is a really important game. So, when they come, and he was really descriptive of how he wanted the uniforms to look and how he wanted the fans to look. And, it was just other little touches, like the exact look of like the stadium and getting the exact, like all the little touches were stuff that I added in. But he was very, very hands-on about how he wanted to look. And he's a very descriptive writer, which is great because it actually gives me more to play with. And it actually makes me try a little harder to fit everything in.
Cool, because I tell you, I really dig just like because you mentioned just how it was a crosstown rivalry, and I can see that in the what the heck you doing?
Yeah.
Just you have that initial look of shock when they think it's Superman, then they realize that it's not Superman, it's Supergirl. Oh man, you ruined the game! Kind of. I was just like,
wait, dude, not only they ruined the game, they threw a beverage at her.
Yeah.
Oh.
Now that's the ultimate insult when you get a drink in the face after saying and. That's what I loved about this because right away I'm like, I don't know, I don't know if I would. I was like ready to say, Supergirl, go pick him up and toss him.
Yeah,
because he's asking for it at that point.
You figure she just saved the one dude's life because Banshee was getting ready to save Fairchild, and she swoops in, saves him out of the way. Now, the one thing I really digged when she swooped him out, it did it with such force that his shoes came off, and you see the one shoe just left there. I was like, nice.
I appreciate those little details too because they give you a sense of speed and power,
right?
In a way, because I mean, it's obviously they're not moving panels in the sense that it's not, but it gives that cinematic quality to it. Another thing I want to comment on real quick: when I saw the first page with Banshee and Supergirl, I had noticed a couple things about her costume. I like the real boots.
Right.
As opposed to like a painted on boot, if that makes any sense. Like you can see
it makes complete sense actually.
And like the belt, you see the belt moving on her costume and that type of thing. They were little details that I noticed, and it was just something I was really enjoying, kind of like looking through the art and seeing like these. I'm a big tiny details person. I tend to, when I go back through after I've read the issue through the first time, I like to go back through and kind of gradually enjoy the art and take a look at little things that artists take time to do. And little things like that, I'm like, oh, that is really cool that, because you guys are on deadlines and schedules and things like that, and it's hard to, I'm sure, get into every tiny detail that you would like to do. But I do appreciate and I enjoy going through to see, like, wow, you spent time to do this, and I'm like, that's really cool. And so this little, I thought it was worth commenting on.
I just have to say before we get too much further into the issue that I just want to just like commend everybody who worked on this issue. And we're working on this series. We've got Keith Champagne, who I've been working with since my second year on Firestorm. We got Nia Rufino, who is just a phenomenal colorist. I had never heard of her before she started working on the book. She actually also she colored the Final Crisis, the issue, the Martian Manhunter issue.
Oh, cool!
She colored that. That was the
one shot talking about
the one shot. Yeah, she colored that, and I saw those pages first before it hit print. and was impressed. And actually, it's a funny story with that, because my wife had actually come up to the office with me. We're sitting in Matt Idelson's office, and we're looking at the pages. Now, you got to keep in mind that my wife is like my barometer when it comes to colorists. Like, she is, purely about European comic books and purely about European colorists, except for Dave Stewart, who she loves on Hellboy. And, like almost every other colorist that's ever worked on me, she's hated, and she loves Niai's work. It was I was in the office. I'm like, okay, listen, I got to show it to Corinne, because she's my barometer, and she just like, okay, she's good.
And this is a fantastic. I mean, it really is across the board. It's just a fantastic looking issue.
Yeah, oh God, yeah.
Yeah, no, everybody is really just firing on all cylinders.
And I feel really even bad now that I mispronounced her name in the beginning of this. Supergirl drops that garbage truck on Banshee.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, dude, that was an amazing sequence, because you had that nice blurriness, then right at the solid image, right at the point of impact. So it showed the speed, it showed the force and all that. I was like, oh, this looked really cool.
That's one of those moments when everybody just kind of comes together. And I didn't even have to say anything to Ni. I didn't have to say anything to Keith. They just went in and they just did a great job with it. And I couldn't be happier with the way it turned out.
I was so impressed with that, like when I saw it, because it was one of those moments where, everything but, I literally was looking for a kitchen sink in the rubble. Because I mean, it was one of those great fights where it just shows, like, the difference with her. And it is one of the things I've always liked about her as a character, in the sense that she keeps trying to find ways to get the upper hand in a situation. And that's been a nice thing about her as she's grown as a character, is to see these moments. And I loved at the end that was, again, you see the confident look on her face, like she was expecting accolades. And rightfully so.
I felt so bad drawing that. It's just such a setup.
But it was a beautiful setup, though. She had that, I'm Supergirl, that splat with the Coke in the face. I was like, man.
Let's correct you. It's not a Coke. It's a soda.
Oh, yes.
It's soda cola in the DC universe. There no Coke, no Pepsi, only soda.
Trademarked by DC?
Exactly.
Is it available in the DC offices? Can you, go to a soda machine? Or
yeah, it's next to the log flume ride and the popcorn machine in Dan's office.
I love this moment where we see her sitting on the side of the building. The way the colors turned out and everything on that, I just think it's really just a gorgeous... Because we've all had this moment where something has gone wrong and you've just had to go off alone and be somewhere and contemplative. But it was really, when you were talking about how well the colorist is working, you take a very bright scene at a ball game, and now all of a sudden we go to a night scene, which really fit the whole introspective scene, but then it slowly shifts over to her, she's getting slowly closer to dawn. Right. And when dawn hits, who is going to be your bright sunshine when you come in but Clark? And I loved how this just flowed so nicely to him.
Oh, yeah.
I was ready to see him at this point.
When they offered me this book and they told me what was going on, and, I mean, you guys know how big a Superman fan I am. And just when I read the script and this is going to be the scene, the heart-to-heart, between Clark and Kara, I was so giddy. I was on pins and needles. I was just couldn't wait to get to these pages. This is something that I've been wanting to do for probably the entirety of my career, is work on these characters. And now that I've been working on Supergirl for the last 2.5, almost 3 months, and it gets better and better. And because I've drawn him in bits and pieces and other things, but this is the first extended scene that I really had to draw Superman in costume. So I was blown over.
You got to draw a really accessible Superman, because for me, it's all about wanting to sit there with the character, and you can put yourself in this moment, sitting there with him and just saying, if I was there at this moment and I was having a bad day and he flew by, you believe that he would stop off to check on you.
Right.
And the look that I'm so sorry look on his face when he just first approached it, I was like, oh man. Yeah, that's something you would never just really imagine seeing Superman, have that. But this is his little cousin. This is,
right.
She just got raked over the coals unjustly. And you can just see him saying, hey, I want to help you there. I'm there for you.
Never condescending, easy to talk to.
Yeah.
I mean, just get that moment and that vibe from him, like this calm. Which, I mean, this is the most powerful guy. I mean, even forget about, where her power levels fall in relation to him. With his experience and everything that he's done and all that stuff, arguably one of the most powerful beings in the DC universe. And just it pulls it down to a level where you just feel like, we want to put a shirt on him and say that he's on the farm again at this moment. and she's pulling that popcorn out of her hair, talking about how they're jerks. And I love that little tiny detail because I'm like, didn't even realize she still had popcorn in her hair. Which is definitely the difference between having a long hair and a short haircut. You wouldn't see a Superman with that problem because his hair's too short for it. But another little tiny detail something that only Supergirl would go through at that point. I love just great moments.
And it goes from that just beautiful, just sentimental moment to that little funny moment with the Kryptonese swearing. Snagriff.
Yeah.
Like,
and we all know what a snagriff is, I think.
I'm willing to bet. I dig the fact that he suggested the secret identity so she can turn it off, because that is part of Clark's strength and part of just who he is, because he's not just Superman, he is Clark Kent. There is that time so that helps him get his humanity. And when we see Kara going on talking to the different people, that was just like, who else is she going to go to for advice? She went to the Titans. She went to Wonder Woman. And who better to get advice on the whole secret identity thing than Wonder Woman? I was just eating that whole sequence up, man.
This is really, when we see the Lana bits, this is where the supporting cast really works so well. And Perry, because they're characters that really, it's something that's, I think, a strength of the Superman universe, is that they're all people you want to meet. Lana, as you get to see her and go through her journey and all that, you want to meet Lana because hey, I could hang out with Lana. I could, to a certain extent, you could hang out with Perry, but he's that boss. Like, you want to work for Perry White, but you do know that with Perry, you're going to watch your P's and Q's. And I love that whole vibe as I go all the way through this. But I loved the conversation between the two because his reasoning for wanting her with where she has just been. Why? I mean, this would be gold for him. It makes sense for him to be seeking her out.
Right.
She's at a crossroads, and it fits because Kara is, she is, and it was just such a wonderful moment. Diana?
Yeah, the Diana, just that fight, not only just the cool fight sequence, but there was just some great just banter back and forth, beautiful artwork of Diana, but little details. Like, they take down the Griffin with the frozen breath, and when they're tying it to the invisible jet, you see it's melting, so you see the water dripping over the jet. I was like, oh, nice attention to detail. Outstanding.
How cool is that jet?
It's pretty cool. It's difficult to draw, though, actually.
Well, I can imagine.
Honest. Because the way that it's designed, it looks like a bird, the way that it's shaped. It doesn't really follow like the sort of aerodynamic lines that you would have on a normal fighter jet.
Is it hard to draw like a transparent object like that? Like where you've... Because, I'm looking here and I'm seeing the bushes in the background and things like that. Is that hard to pull that off, or how does that work?
No, actually, that also, again, it's the team that you have behind you. I drew it in as I would normally draw in a vehicle, except I just made an indication, like small indications of where I would want the tree line or the grass to be. And Nia just went in and painted, did all of that herself, and just really pulled it out. And much better than I had imagined it, because the reference that I had for the Invisible Jet was what Terry Dodson had did in Wonder Woman. And it didn't have quite the same, like, you didn't really see through it the way that you do in this issue. It sort of had this sort of like glass sheen to it. Almost, it looked more like an actual vehicle. It didn't really look like it was this looks like the Invisible Jet. this is what you would expect to see if you were, or not see. Yeah,
that's what I'm appreciating.
Yeah,
I'm just like, as I'm looking at, I'm like, this is really it's cool. And I mean, that's when you look at these vehicles that the heroes that are, especially like these long legacy vehicles that we all saw in cartoons and stuff.
Right.
To see them brought to life in this fashion and look very, very contemporary and cool today. For me, it's a pure geek out looking at this and seeing her spin. To see her change in her costume. I mean, this was a great sequence for me because I'm like, I watched the show with her, and to see that and see it fit in, where it's not hokey, it fits totally into this today, but yet there are something from the classic, and I love these bits. And her showing another way of looking at the mask, because I wouldn't have been a fan of her doing a mask, not even just because Supergirl hasn't, but because of the fact that her face has been so out there that this really is the better alternative for her.
Right. Yeah. Well, one of the things that we wanted to do, and you see that in dialogue actually, is we kind of go through not only the advantages of having a secret identity, but the disadvantages of having a secret identity. In the case of somebody like Supergirl, it's not really... It's more along the lines of people going after people a villain going after someone that she cares about in order to get to her. So that's, we're able to weigh the pros and cons of both within one issue and have it fit into the dialogue, and I think that's really one of Sterling's strengths.
One of the things I noticed, how with the message with discussion with Diana, this was like really the second time someone warned her about the dangers of people knowing her name. First being when she's talking to Clark and Clark's telling her about Banshee's powers, and then again with Diana, it's like, so I'm seeing like, oh, that's a nice little thing. We've seen a lot of different stories where when a secret identities gets identified and discovered, it leads to problems down the line for the hero. So I liked seeing them contemplate all the different options, all the different outcomes, because there are advantages, but you got your disadvantages. You got to watch that.
It's one of the strengths. It's one of the strengths of the DCU characters is that you can see them show you the cons of being a hero, but at the same time, you never lose that I would love to do that. And that's an interesting balance, because you could take it too far and make it be like, well, why would anyone ever become a hero? But there's a nice balance of moments where you just sit there and go, in spite of all that, and how true and how real that all feels, which does make it all more accessible, and that's why I love it, there's still that moment where there's that part of you that goes, yeah, but it's still cool. And that's important as a reader, because you don't want to, it was what you were talking about earlier, Jamal, you don't want to get dragged down so far that you don't have those moments where, because for all of us, this is escapist fantasy, and you want to believe that you could be a part of all this. And I think that is the strength of this book, because I felt like all the time, I felt like I could be sitting anywhere in these scenes and somehow fit comfortably into the discussion, at least I hope. But that's fun of comics. I mean, that's what's great about this.
I agree. I think one of the things for me that people like to ask, well, what's the difference between Superman and Supergirl? And I think, you've got two things that you can do with Kara as a character that you can't really do with Superman, because Superman is, even though Superman does occasionally make mistakes or has missteps, he triumphs in the end. He's always seen as the great big hero. I think the thing is up until now, Kara hasn't really been that concerned with taking up the mantle, and it's sort of a mantle that was thrust on her. I think that's one of the differences between her and Superboy, Connor, was that Connor came out of his tube thinking he was Superman and was trying to convince the world that he was Superman, and that eventually he would be Superman and that he would be as good as Superman. And he sort of put that pressure on himself in a lot of ways for a very long time. And then you have Supergirl, who, for all intents and purposes, hasn't been on Earth that long. She's only been on Earth for about a year plus, maybe 2 years, and it was sort of assumed that just because she was Clark's cousin, that she had the same powers, she was going to take up the family business. So she fought against that for so long, and now we're showing, with One Issue, we're taking those steps to show her embracing her destiny, and she's going to make mistakes because she's a hero in training. She is going to make mistakes, but it's about learning from those mistakes. I think that's going to be the thing that makes this series really, really pick up.
I'm inclined to agree with that. And it's, what she does for me, and this is oversimplifying, so please, anybody listening, don't take this as me saying she's a clone. It's one of the things I like about when we see Dick Grayson with Bruce.
Right.
Dick Grayson has more of that human factor to him. Tim Drake, same thing. They have more of that accessible human factor because, like you said, they can make mistakes. They can do things that Batman can't because Batman needs to be one step above. He needs to feel that way. So, to a certain extent, like Superman and Batman at times feel like, and they need to feel like they're these icons. And, like, you can't quite reach equal status with them.
Right.
But yet, Supergirl, you do. You feel like, and that makes you feel like, on some level, I could hang with them.
Well, that's true. That's true. I mean, but you also have, and I think there was a JLA 21, the lead-in into Final Crisis. There was a moment when they were discussing Vixen's power issues, and Batman says to Superman something like, "You should have told us what was going on." And Superman just looks at him and goes, "No, people need to trust me implicitly. I'm Superman." There's a lot of weight to that idea, is that he has put himself, by not even really meaning to, but sort of put himself in this position where he has to be trusted. People have to be able to depend on him. Batman is different. Batman doesn't necessarily need the trust of the average person in order to do his job. Actually, it's better for him if the average person doesn't trust him, because then he's still seen as a wild card. You never know exactly what he's going to do, even though you got this idea that he's going to do the right thing. But as long as you don't, and I think that's the difference between Batman and Nightwing, is that Nightwing has more of that Superman element in him, where he is more trusted. He is more open. He's a more readied presence than Batman is. He's the guy he's one of those guys that's able to bring the hero community together.
I think that's why I liked so much this moment when Clark was talking to Kara in this, because it was a moment where he didn't need to wear almost the mask of Superman at that point, because he's got the Clark Kent mask where, when he's the bumbling Clark Kent at times, he can't truly be himself. He can be elements of himself. And even as Superman, he's explaining there that he can't truly let his hair down. And we see him with Lois. We see him with his parents. We see this moment with Kara where he's just really not afraid to say that he's not perfect and that, that's part of life and all that. And I love that message from him, because you don't get to see that often, and rightfully so. And that's one of the things that I really enjoy, is when you get to see these moments, you get to know that, just what you're saying, that he has to be this way.
Right.
And I'm like, I could talk about Superman for hours.
I know. Oh, easily, dude. Yeah. Her on the Kent farm.
Oh, wait, bitter.
Oh, man.
I mean, I'm not even going to say. We might as well put a spoiler in right now, because there's no way I can't talk about the most recent Action Comics issue.
Yeah, if you have not read Action Comics, you may want to.
I mean, we talked
Skip
about
ahead.
Yeah.
Skip ahead.
Skip ahead.
I mean, we talked about it last episode. Now, to see Jonathan there, and this moment with Jonathan and Martha, and and knowing what is coming with that, and it's just such a great and powerful moment to see her there, and see her just. It looks like I wanted to be on that swing.
Well, it was just little small stuff, like her swinging on the swing, Lana picking that wheat stalk, and just she's just sitting there. They're just hanging out on a Kansas farm, and it would make sense that all of that would be there. And I was just reading, going, yes, I can, I can feel the breeze on my face as I'm reading this. I can, kind of hear the creaking of the tree, as the rope swing goes back and forth. There's just so much just emotion in what I was seeing, like on Kara's face as she's sitting there talking, just opening up, just saying what she's going through. I was just like, oh my God, it's wow.
When I was reading this and I was looking at this sequence, I was thinking, like, a couple summers ago, I went to California and I got to go to the site where they shot the 60s TV series Batcave.
Right.
And where the Wayne Manor was and stuff like that. I was looking at this and thinking to myself, I'm like, geez, I wish this was a real place because I would go here. No, I mean, tell me how cool that would be just to sit on the Kent farm.
It would be very, very cool. It would be very cool to just sit on the porch, and just look out over the Kansas plains and everything. True super nerd in me would probably steal the mailbox.
And that wouldn't be an eBay item, would it?
No, it would not.
Well, this is another breathtaking sequence because it looked really peaceful and calm and a good place to have this kind of conversation with Lana where she's trying, both of them are kind of together trying to sort out their next step. And in a way, finding in their own needs and their own desires a reason to take the steps forward that they do. I really, really enjoyed this moment because I love Lana as a character. And I think there's times where you really get to see why Clark as a teenager was so in love with her. And these are moments like that where I'm like, okay, I get it.
Yeah. And I tell you, this was just another art team, knock one out the park with the settings, with the sunset and just the different hues. I was like, there was just some really just beautiful artwork. It goes beyond just a comic book, look to it. It was just like really breathtaking stuff. You guys were just, firing on all cylinders for that sequence.
Thanks. Yeah. Again, that was just a case of really good communication and just being able to. I had an image in my head of what I wanted to do, and they were able to give it to me, and I was really, really happy. I was really, really happy.
I love the Cat Grant smirk when she gets the card because it really shows who she is. Because I talked earlier in the book about how she was like the hunter at that point, and there is a certain thrill to her of the chase, of the hunt. You get that vibe from her. The cat, she's ready to pounce, and I love that moment where there's the challenge that's laid out in front of her. And she likes that. I mean, that's what drives her because she knows this is something that's going to be interesting for her. And I absolutely adored that moment where she was looking at the card and didn't back up from it, didn't get shaken by it. She was driven by it, and that was cool.
Yeah, and I don't know if you did this intentionally or whatnot, but she reminded me of Cameron Diaz in that one sequence when she's got that little smirk on her face.
I don't know if that's intentional, but I'll take it if I can get it. I was basically, I kind of see Kat as little Cameron Diaz, kind of a little bit of who's the chick from Sex and the City?
Kim Cattrall?
Yeah. Kim Cattrall. Yeah. Yes, Kim Cattrall. A little Kim Cattrall. Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of it is actually just sort of riffing off of what Gary's doing on Action as well. And taking what he's done and working with those designs.
And this is really it's a good your personalization of what we're seeing. It's nothing like jarring when I read Action and going to this. You can tell just right from the boom. This is him. This is her. Especially a lot of the Superman sequences. I was really liking that because I was liking what I'm seeing on Action. I get here and I see that same type of that nerdy Clark Kent style, but the dun da da Superman. It's you see the two different people, and it was like, yes, I'm digging this. This is. I've been digging Supergirl, and now this is Supergirl's rising up in the stack of, stuff looking forward to.
Oh, thanks, man. But I'm telling you, with the Daily Planet sequence in the first 3 pages, I'm drawing the whole thing, and all I keep hearing over and over in my head is, well, gee, Mr. White, I've never understood violence in any form.
That had to be great, though, just having that kind of love for the character and being able to say, wow, I'm like bringing this to life.
It's truly it's a true geek out moment. It really, career wise, it's a true and I think what helps is working with Sterling and working with Jeff and working with James and getting to see the artwork from Renato and Gary and having creative partners like Niai and like Keith, who, and the edit with Nachi when he was still at DC, and with Matt also, and just having everybody having a unified vision of what we want to do with the books. So I think that really helps, and all of us just being colossal Superman nerds anyway. So
Probably the most sincere compliment I could give all of you right now is I've always been, if there's Batman people and Superman people, I've always been more of a Batman guy. I've always loved Superman. I loved the movies. I loved him in cartoons. I loved the old TV show. I loved him in comics. It wasn't that I didn't like the character. It was just more, if you ask my preference, I am so Superman happy. And I'm not just talking Superman. I'm Superman Universe, Supergirl, Crypto, the whole, Gambit, the Daily Planet, and all that. It's just coming to life for me in a way where I'm like, I can totally see why people totally have drooled over this character, because this is just fun. It's really great. And this last page, and it's really the one that I want to compliment you on so intensely, because I loved the little background details with Perry and everything where you get to see his personality, but when we see her for the first time in her secret identity, it really, for me, in a very real world level, worked. Because one of the nice things about being a female with long hair is, and we see women do it all the time, and it's one of the things I always can compliment women on, is women can change their look in such drastic ways by doing things with their hair, accessorizing. And it's a thing that men we're not competent at. And it's when I saw this sequence with her, I'm like, this is so believable for me. You see her with a completely different hairstyle. You see her, totally matching up her hair to the glasses and the clothes in such a way that she pulls off the whole gawky little teen thing. I'm curious to see what her personality is going to be like as she dresses like this. But I mean, it's clear to me, I'm like, okay, she's got a look that matches some personality change that she's going to have when she's in this outfit. And I really ate that up, because I'm like, this is a believable secret identity. And I loved that moment just visually right away, because, I mean, hi, very nice to meet you. It's meant to be like our first look. We haven't had a chance to see the personality end, so you got to go off the visual end, and it was crucial at the end of this issue to give us that, because it's the big reveal of what is she going to look like, and we've got Linda Lang for the first time here. This was cool. It was very cool.
Yeah, I like the nice blend of, there is a bit of Clark in her, with the tie, the glasses, but there is definitely her own style, her own flair to her. Even the way she's standing there, kind of like, cockeyed a little bit, and I was like, oh, this is going to be a fun ride, man.
I love Perry going at in the background, though.
Oh, yeah, going after Steve Lombard. Oh, yeah, that was great. With Kara as Linda, especially like that outfit is straight out of Cosmo Girl. I didn't even have to really make that many changes to it. I mean, this is the way that teen girls are dressing right now. So it was it wasn't that hard. It was just I had the image in my head of what I wanted to do, and it just happened to line up with current fashion. So.
And it does totally fit, though, a very different look from what we're used to seeing from her. Especially with the hair the hair change was very crucial to me.
Oh, no, absolutely. But I also wanted to avoid, the whole Linda Lee Danvers, wig. And it's the problem with having a character with a wig. It can be too much. You can overplay it a little bit too much. So I kind of, when Jay Ferber and I were doing Venture way back when, all those eons ago, we kind of played with that idea a little bit as well. So I wanted to avoid that. And, she is, in a lot of ways, going to be a wholly different character than when the Linda Danvers or Linda Lee versions of the Secret Identity in the past. So.
Cool. And today's teens, they aren't doing wigs or things like that, so it would be, it would be a very awkward thing for her to be doing right now.
But it also, I think it also just plays to that idea of It is sort of a riff on Clark's secret identity, because he's in plain sight, just hiding in plain sight, and she's going to be walking into the Daily Planet and be able to look Cat Grant in the face, and she won't even realize she's talking to Supergirl. And it's just one of those ridiculous comic book conceits that you just gotta go with. But I think it's funny as hell.
Especially because, too, she's going to be able to see Cat from Cat. Like, instead of seeing it in the article, she's actually going to be able to see what drives Cat. And I just seeing her kind of toy around with her with the card and things like that, I'm like, oh, this is going to be so much fun. Can we talk for a little bit? I mean, and you've been giving us so much time, so I don't want to take too much of your time, but I'd like to talk real quickly just about Tangent Superman's Reign, because it was a series. You did the first 6 issues of it.
Yeah.
And it's really, especially with issue 6, because I really, you got to do this sequence that I just really adored of the two Batman.
Oh, yeah.
And it was I mean, I really like your Batman.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because I still feel like he's a work in progress. I don't feel like I've quite found my voice for him, but I think I get a little closer with that issue. Because I haven't again, with the bigger characters, like, and the same thing with Superman. Like, I'm drawing him right now in Supergirl 36, and I think the way that I'm drawing him now is even better than the way that I drew him in 34, because I have a better hand. I've got a slightly better handle on how I want to draw him. I think the next opportunity I get to draw Batman will be a little bit better than I did in the Tangent issue. But the Tangent issue was fun because it was basically a Batman story. All the other characters all the rest of the JLA was gone. It was just Batman being Batman.
Those are some of my favorite Batman moments, are when you see this guy who doesn't have powers, this guy who's trained himself,
right,
have to basically pick up the slack and try to help out the big guns. Because, I mean, your Green Lantern's been taken out at this point. I mean, that's a heavy hitter.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. My favorite line from that whole issue is when he's just about to jump out of the Spectre's window, and he goes, "I don't debate. I'll investigate. I'll check back with you later."
Here's an interesting question. When you were talking right now about how your Batman's evolving and your Superman has evolved and it keeps evolving, do you as a creator look back at some of your previous work ever and kind of like see like, wow, look at where I've come, or look at how far I've come on drawing this particular character? And do you? I mean, you guys have these insane schedules, so I mean, I don't know if you get time to do that, but
it really depends. I think it depends on how I'm feeling that day. Like, sometimes I'll look at older work that I've done and I'll just be like, what was I thinking? But sometimes I'll be able to look at something that I've done with an objective eye and say, you know what, this wasn't that bad. And this is what I was able to do then as compared to now. If you go on my blog, I put up some pages that I did in 1994. I did this 8-page story called the Massachusetts State Police Watchtower Division. I had to scan the pencils that I did at the time. And you want to talk like evolution in style? Like, you look at that stuff compared to the stuff that I'm doing now 12 years later, or not even until 14 years later, it was 1994. You look at the work in between. You can actually track the evolution year by year from that point to now. Actually, just the way that the storytelling and how pages are laid out and how backgrounds are drawn and everything. So
I was curious about that because as a fan, and I'll have a link to your blog with this episode, so any fans that, if you're listening to this episode right now, if you take a look in our show notes, you'll be able to get from our show notes and from our website right to Jamal's blog, so definitely check it out. I got the opportunity to meet you. My introduction to you was Firestorm. And I really enjoyed your run on Firestorm and the way the costume got reworked and just that whole take on it. And I got to meet you for the first time at a Pittsburgh Comic-Con. And I remember I was so excited when Brian Deemer from CGS said, "Hey, Jamal Igle's over there," to get a sketch from you of that, because I was enjoying your run on that so much. And to now have seen, I mean, I loved your work then, and to see what you're doing now for me is just as a fan who's enjoyed your work, it's been a pleasure to just go on this journey with you, because I was geeking out on the show about your Crime Syndicate issue that you did from the Search for Ray Palmer, which I thought was just stellar. It was such a wonderful story. And
Thank
then Tangent Superman's Reign has just been great. Supergirl, I enjoyed Nightwing, your run on there. It's been really great to just kind of follow your journey, and that's part of the fun of knowing who creators are, I think, in comics.
Right.
As a fan, we get to kind of journey along with you. But I was curious what that was like from your perspective, if you ever do that. And it's interesting to see that, there's certain times where it's fun to look back at my work and kind of say, wow, that's, I'm kind of more objective about it now, and I can kind of appreciate what I did there. But then there's other times where I'm like, I just got to get away from it. And it's got to be harder because it's you.
Well, I think part of it is, I don't know if this is the same way for every penciler. I know this is the way it is for me. You have a limited amount of time. I've got 30 days to draw a 22-page book. And while I'm in that mode, while I'm in that work mode, you have very few opportunities to step back and take a look at the issue as a whole until the very end. And you look at the entire issue and you can go, okay, well, this didn't work. We got to keep an eye on those faces. We got to do this, do that, and try to apply, mentally taking notes and applying that to the next issue. Because I'm always trying to get a little better. I'm always trying to make my work a little bit stronger, a little bit tighter. Because I feel like there's still a lot of room for improvement. And I feel like I haven't even reached, honestly, I don't feel like I've even reached my peak yet, my full potential as an artist. Being an artist it's a journey. You're always growing, you're always changing, you're always evolving. Sometimes you take somebody like Stuart Immerman, who completely changed his style, and his new style is just as good as the stuff that he was doing when he was drawing Superman. You have, as an artist, we have all that, we allow ourselves to, we have all that space to evolve and to grow and to change, and that's a lot of what I'm trying to do. Without, I don't want to sound pretentious about it. It's the way that I feel. I'm always trying to get better. I'm always trying to make my work stronger.
Well, and that's not pretentious. That's actually, I think it's just the opposite. It makes you very accessible because you're sitting here saying, and actually I think for us as readers and people who enjoy following the comic work, I think that for all of us, it's kind of, people are always asking, like, what do I need to do to become an artist, for people that, are interested in doing that. And it really just, the message there of just, it's a field where you're constantly growing and you're constantly improving. And I think that's why it's fun to track artists throughout their entire career and see, like, what were they doing in the beginning? What were they doing in the middle? What were they doing, towards the latter part of their career? It's always fun to kind of see that growth. And that's oversimplifying because there's constant changes of stages all the way through in a nice long career.
No, that's true. You got somebody like John Romita Jr. There's John Romita Jr. who was working on Spider-Man back in the 80s is not the John Romita Jr. who's doing Spider-Man now. But if you look at his progression through Spider-Man, through Starbrand, through X-Men, all the way up to, his most recent runs, even stuff he's doing like Kick-Ass, Punisher, and everything he's done, you see that progression, you see that change, you learn, you grow, you allow yourself to learn how to simplify or to complicate, or it really depends on your own personal tastes and preferences, and your tastes change as a person. Our taste changes as we get older. So God knows how much more of my artwork is going to change from the way it was 5 or 10 years ago.
That's kind of the fun thing, I'm sure, for you, and what makes this career probably so rewarding would be the fact that that, like, there's something to strive for. There's something to continually, like, that never will stop for you in this career.
Right.
There's a point, and I think the best thing you can say about this career is you probably, if you ever hit that point where you're like, I'm perfect now, you probably should get out.
You know what? You're absolutely right. That's something that I've always said to myself. It's true. If you ever feel like you've gotten to the point where there's no room for growth or there's no room for improvement, then it really is time to go and find something else to do, because honestly, you're not helping anybody. You're killing yourself.
One of the things, Tangents Reign, one of the things that I really wanted to kind of shout out, and I wanted to make sure I mentioned it, one of the things I really have been enjoying about this miniseries is we get a look at an Elseworlds universe from the perspective of our heroes. And as we were talking about Supergirl, and I was talking about how much I like feeling like I'm there with the characters and there's an accessible point for me, Tangent Superman's Reign has that for me too, because we're so familiar with our heroes that to go over and see this world from their perspective and get their commentary on this world and to see their visual reactions to this world and to see them interact with this world was for me a pure geek out moment, because it's nice because it's not a one issue happening. This has been spread out. It's a year series, and the first 6 issues has been a great example of how really nice this series has been in kind of exposing you to this world and these characters, and I've grown to really enjoy it. It was a series that I picked up. I'm like, okay, it looks interesting. I'll pick it up and I'll kind of start paging through it and all that. And as it has been progressing on, like by issue 6, I was like, oh, I am like totally invested in this world.
Yeah.
It was a fun project to work on, and number one, you get to draw the JLA, which is always cool. And then you throw in all these characters that I forgot even existed, let alone I never even imagined that I'd be drawing the Tangent Universe Superman, or Batman or Power Girl or any of these Tangent Universe characters. So that was half the reason for taking the job in the first place, was just getting to work on those characters and just having fun with that. And then the way that Dan and I were working on the book was I was working from his plots. So that gave me so much more room to play with the storytelling.
Oh, wow. So this is a very different experience for you than, say, working on Supergirl. It's just kind of a different...
No, absolutely. I don't really have a preference about how what kind of script I work from, whether Marvel-style plot script like I did on Tangent Superman's Reign, or a full script like I'm doing on Supergirl. They both have their advantages, but they also have their disadvantages. Is because the disadvantage with Supergirl is that I'm kind of pathological enough to try and put everything that Sterling puts in the script into the pages. But with Tangent Superman's Reign, there was just so much more freedom as far as how the storytelling was going to be. My only problem with that is I like working with a full script, because then I know what the characters are going to say. I can shape their emotions to what they're going to say rather than the other way around. So I never knew what was going to be coming out of anybody's mouths on the Tangent series.
Jamal, would it be fair to say that every time you work with a different writer, it's like a new and unique situation because of the fact that you're getting something a little bit different every time?
Yeah, well, you got to think about it this way. Comics are such a collaborative process that, every time you work with a new writer, you're working with an entirely new personality. Everybody has their strengths and their weaknesses, and as creators. As much as you're trying to get used to working with their style of writing, you're also trying to get used to working with that person at the same time. You're trying to build a rapport with that writer and trying to build a relationship with that writer, so that you have a really collaborative process.
And trying to bring out the best in what you want to do and the best in what they want to do, and
Exactly.
Finding something where everybody is what everybody's trying to do is presented in a way that it comes across to the fans that, like, hey, this is what we're trying to do here. Do you get it?
Exactly. Having that unified vision. And also, I've been very lucky that I've worked with some really good writers. So I think the strength of a lot of the material that I've worked on Nightwing, on Firestorm, on Supergirl, with Tangent, and even before that with doing 52. When you have good material to work from, then it makes the work that much stronger. Then if you can build a rapport with the writer that you're working with, then the work becomes that much more personal.
You mentioned 52. Is it hard with a weekly series when you've got shifting art teams? Is it hard to maintain kind of that consistency with, like, the previous issues? I don't know. How does that work for you as an artist? Because I one of the things I remember from those issues is just how everything felt very consistent.
With the first issue that I did, which was How to Win a War in Space, I only needed a few pages from the issue before that because I only needed to reestablish the look of each of the characters for the space sequence where they were in what's her face's ship. I can't even remember. I keep wanting to say Queen. What was her?
Was that? It wasn't Styx, was it?
Lady Styx. Lady
Yeah,
Styx.
yeah.
When they were in Lady Styx's ship, because you hadn't seen the inside of Lady Styx's ship, and you hadn't seen the fleet really for, I guess, like 20 issues or something like that. So and we were on such a tight schedule that I basically just had to go in and just work as quickly as possible. Everything else that happened in the issue, I just needed to look at how certain characters, how Renee Montoya had been drawn previously in the book, and how Batwoman had been drawn, and how Osiris and Sobek and like all these other peripheral characters, Animal Man's wife and the kids, and just trying to keep those looks consistent. But because I didn't have to correspond with any of the artwork really that was in the issue before mine, then it was fine.
Because the storylines were different.
Right.
Or the character focus.
The same thing with issue 45 is I only did a couple pages in issue 45, but they were all self-contained pieces that you hadn't seen anywhere else in the series. So as long as the characters matched up, I didn't really have to worry about having the storytelling match up to any other pages.
Is there any other character out there that you're like, man, I wish I could work on this character?
There's a lot. There's a lot. I would love to get my hands on Robin, because I've never done Robin, or really had an opportunity to do Robin. Flash, I'd love to do the Flash. There's too many books. I used to have Superman on the list, but now I'm drawing Superman, so I got to put something else on the list. I'm open. You never know what's going to come up, and what characters are going to strike your fancy. I don't see myself working at Marvel anytime soon, but I would love to work on Captain America.
Ooh, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
I think what Matt Fraction had did on Iron Fist was great, and I know I haven't really read the Dwayne Swizzerski. Is that how you pronounce his name? I haven't really had a chance to. I read like the first 2 issues.
You don't want to ask us how to do pronunciations. We'll butcher anything.
Somebody.
Yeah, but we're the wrong 2 guys.
There's too many things. I mean, there's too many cool characters.
Now you mentioned Flash. Which Flash is your Flash? Because mine's
Flash?
Bart. Mine's Bart, and
Wally's my Flash. That was the Flash that I grew up with, because I didn't really seriously start getting, like, I was always a DC fan, but sort of a peripheral DC fan, at least the comics. I was more familiar with the movies and the TV shows, and I didn't really start seriously reading DC Comics until Crisis on Infinite Earths. So that Wally became my Flash right after that. So that was the Flash. I mean, Wally was the Flash for 20-something years. So the last 20 plus years, he was my Flash.
See, we're bonding.
Yeah,
again.
I know. That's your Flash too. Yeah.
You Hawkman blasphemer.
Hey, I'm a Hawkamaniac now. I've been converted.
Hawkman, I'm curious to see what Jim ultimately does with the character, because I just read the special and I heard the episode where you guys were talking about it, and now he's not he's not reincarnated. He's actually the space cop Carter Hall, as opposed to the reincarnated Egyptian prince.
I'm still not sure if he's being messed with though, so I don't know. That's because there's this kind
it's
of
a little confusing.
Yeah.
Well, I think that Jeff did a really good job when he reintroduced him in JSA, and I think like the first 25 issues were really well done, and I think that was just a combination of Jeff and of Rags Morales working on the book together. You get a good creative team going. I mean, that does more for me than anything else.
I think it's true of anybody who has a strong love for a character. I think, and I mean, I've got lots of characters a strong love for, but in the Hawkman case, this is kind of where I'm at. And it would be true of any writer trying to tackle this character right now. Anytime
Right.
you say you're going to tweak something a little bit, there's always that concern with what's going to be tweaked and how much, but the end result's got to be, you got to wait until you actually have the product in your hand beforehand, because everything else is just speculation. Until you actually could take a look and say, okay, how much are they doing? And, because it could be just a tiny bit or it could be a lot, and I don't know. So I'm anxious and excited about that. This is a great time to be a comic fan right now because there's so many books that are, Supergirl. It's a book now. All of a sudden, it's been elevated into you're in this high profile. It's Action Comics, Supergirl, and Superman. You've got these 3 great books right now that are in this high intensity series of events that are going on with like New Krypton.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's next week or the week? It's not next week. It's the week after. Right?
No, the first one is Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen.
Okay,
that's the first book, and that comes out on Thursday of this week.
Okay.
So that's the first, the opening salvo, and then New Krypton starts next week.
So it's like every every week.
Every week. Every week.
That's when the triangle numbering was around for Superman. I was reading Superman during that time, and I adored that because it was like, you turned in every week for a new episode of what was going on, and I'm looking so forward to these books being linked and, and the events, affecting each other and everything that's going on. I just think it's going to be just a really, really fun time to be reading this. I think we're all ready for big epic, and I like that it's epic storytelling in the Superman books.
Right.
This is where the events are. Go right here. This is New Krypton, this huge thing that's going on in Superman. I'm so excited.
You know what? I must implore anybody who's reading Action, Superman, and Supergirl to pay attention, to go back through the Atlas storyline and to go back through the Brainiac storyline and really look at what's going on in the background of each of these issues, because there are clues littered through these books that lead right into New Krypton. So if you blink, you're going to miss something really, really important.
Wow! So
cool.
this is one of those that you're saying it's well worth going back and rereading.
It is well worth going back and really, really just paying attention. Just really paying attention. And I wouldn't normally say that about any comic book storyline, but this is honestly one of those times where when we were in Baltimore, and I'm at dinner with James Robinson and Jeff and with Sterling and with Matt, and we're talking about what's coming up, not just in New Krypton, but what the stuff that we've got planned for the next couple of years, and just the stuff that's going on, and it's crazy. Is absolutely nuts. There's so many twists and turns happening in this book, you will not believe it. I guarantee that anybody, a lot of people brush off the Atlas storyline as just being a slugfest. There's so much more going on in that story than I even realized reading it the first time. I had to go back through the issues of, okay. That's not good. No, that's not good. So definitely comb through those books. I'm telling you, because you're gonna get to New Krypton and you're gonna slap yourself in the forehead.
That's one of the things I'm really liking right now is there seems to be a shift back, and I don't know if it's intentional or what, to having creators have longer runs on a title where they can plan out longer stories, where we can see these kind of linking threads to early stories. And I grew up with that. And to see this back again and to be able to go back and, like you said, reread stories to get more bang. Everyone talks about, well, comics are more expensive, that's everything. But hey, if you give me, when you were saying that, I was like a fish on a hook. I'm like, I can go back and reread, and there's stuff in there that I haven't seen yet that like is going to be, like, after when these issues come out, even to go back through again and look at them and see, because I've already read the issues multiple times, but now to be able to go back and there's something more in there yet again, another layer, that's adding a lot of value to my experience and another level of enjoyment to an experience that I already had a great time with the first time through.
Right. Well, I mean, I think it helps that there's a definite vision. I mean, I've seen the Bible; it's thick. The Superman Bible for the next couple of years. It's pretty hefty, and these guys have a real tight vision for what they want to do with these books. So I think that, and just having the support of Dan and of Paul and Matt to really just explore their ideas and do something. There's a lot of people. I read the message boards and people say that we're getting too Silver Agey. Trust me, there's a lot of stuff that's going on that they ain't never done in the Silver Age.
See, I think, though, you can pull in things that are classic from the classic mythos, and yet you can do something new with it. While at the and I think that's how you bring along fans that have been reading for ages, but at the same time make it unique and an interesting experience for newer readers. And that's what I'm loving about this right now, because I'm seeing things that, yes, I grew up with, but I'm seeing other things that maybe I didn't even grow up with that they're bringing back into the books, because maybe I wasn't reading Superman at that time.
That's true.
It's neat to see those things being brought in, but they're not being brought in like they were back then. They're being brought in pulling what was the best of the concept and reworking and reimagining it for today's audience, today's sensibilities, and then taking it, where can we take it now? Where can it go now? And that's what Brainiac was.
That's true. And I think the thing that a lot of long-time comic book fans tend to forget is that, yes, you've been reading Superman comics for 30 years, but the 15-year-old who just got into comics hasn't been reading Superman comics for 30 years. So they don't know all the backstories. They don't know that there have been 5 or 6 different versions of Brainiac. They don't know that in the Silver Age, Supergirl's parents were alive, living on Rockhead. They don't know these things, so it's new for them.
And I agree, and I do think one of the things, and I totally agree with you. And one of the great things, though, if we're going to pull people into comics, newer readers into comics, one of the things we have to show them is how comics are different than novels, and what the difference always was for me. I've always read novels. I've always loved novels. I still read and enjoy novels. The difference between comics and that, though, is it's a serialized medium, and there are things that you read. To hear that there's a 2-year Bible for Superman, I eat that up because I want to know that the stuff I read a year ago matters. We all want to know that. That's why people get, bang their head against the wall with continuity. I get that when people do, because we all want to feel like the events, these characters have ongoing lives and that they matter. A fight that they had ages ago, like you were talking about the Atlas battle, for example, that seemed like it was just a battle. There's a whole bunch to that you're going to go, oh my gosh, that's what they were doing? And that's the stuff I appreciate on such a huge level. So
I think we had gotten so far away from that, especially in the mid-'90s for so long, that I think readers' attention spans shrank slightly. Because, people talk about how sometimes decompression in comics is really bad, but we forgot what it was like to have a writer on a book for 5-6 years sowing seeds of future storylines. You didn't have that for so long because the turnover on creative teams over the years have just been so rapid. So now we're back. We're at least trying to bring back that idea that we are sowing seeds for stories that will happen down the line. Nothing has to be absolutely immediate, but it also doesn't mean that we have to take something that can be done in one issue and stretch it over 6.
I think people mistakenly attribute a lot of that to the trade mentality.
I think so too.
To say that comic companies are looking for people to only buy the single trade is insane. Because realistically, a comic company that's putting out trades are going to be saying to themselves, not only do we want them to buy this one trade, if they're waiting for the trade, we want them to buy this trade and the 3 and 4 others that follow right afterwards. And the only way that's going to happen if there's a hook that make you say, hey, you're reading a storyline here, but that storyline's going to build into this, into this, into this,
Right.
into this, and then then the trade market becomes a serialized trade market as well. So I think that your trades don't have to always be so nice and neat. They can be serialized in the same way that your monthly issues are, and I think that's something that I'm glad to see a shift back to, because I think
Right.
that's the hook of comics. That's the pleasure of it.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
Jamal, is there anything else? Because, I mean, we kept you for a lot longer than I intended to, and I want to tell you how much I appreciate it. Is there anything else you want to shout out or anything you want to get out there? Because this is really about you, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate you taking some time for us.
Is there anything else I want to shout out or anything else I want to get out? Okay, well, if again, going back to my blog, if you go to my blog, which is jamaligle.blogspot.com, you will see pictures of my daughter, who is now 5.5 months old, who just started belly crawling a couple of days ago. So I'm completely freaked out and frightened by that. But at the same time, she's cute as a button, so it can't be helped. So that's the only other thing. I love you, sweetie. I love you, Corinne. That's my only shout out. So everything else is just Supergirl related.
I got to tell you how.
Wait a minute. I do have one other thing. Depending on when this episode goes up, I will be speaking at Bowling Green State University on Saturday, October 25th. I'll be speaking for an hour and a half, and the title of my little speech is called "Black in a Four-Color World." This is just talking about my career and what it's like to be a black comic book artist working in mainstream comics.
If you get a chance, go to Miles Pizza. Miles Pizza. It's right by the campus. If you ask anybody, they'll point you in the right. BG's my alma mater.
Okay.
And Miles is just the greatest pizza in the world. I absolutely love it.
I have to try that Friday night when I get in.
Yeah, they have if you like garlic, they have a garlic bread with cheese. You get a loaf of it, and you get it cut open face. It's just gooey with cheese and garlic tasting, and it's all absolutely wonderful.
That sounds really good, actually. I'll have to remember that.
All right. That's...
Just one more quick thing.
Yeah.
You know how absolutely cool it is just seeing you as the proud papa? Because when we saw you at the CGS, you're like, hey, take a look at my picture. Here's my little pumpkin. Here's my little peanut. And I was like, oh, man, you had that, that proud papa beaming. And that was just really cool to see, man.
I can't. You know what? I can't help myself. I really, like, half my conversations are... Have I showed you the latest baby pictures? Here's pictures. Here's Katie over here. Here's Katie over here. And today we're playing her new favorite game, which is how much stuff can I drop on the floor.
It's nice that you share that with all of us, though, because I really enjoyed that too at the Super Show.
Yeah.
That was one of the nice things, is like just kind of get a glimpse into your life like that, and it was really nice that you shared that.
And she is a cutie, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Thanks.
Yeah.
I figure 20 years from now she'll be sitting behind a Comic-Con table doing sketches and talking about how Daddy didn't want me to get into the business, but here I am anyway.
It was great to see you, though. That you were so happy throughout that entire Super Show. Like, you were back there drawing, showing off Supergirl. I'm like, life is pretty good for Jamal.
Yes.
I was really happy for you, because you got the daughter, you got all this really great stuff going on at the moment. I'm like, yeah, this is.
I am a terminally happy man. I couldn't be happier with just how my life is. Suck on that, losers. Just kidding. No,
And you know what? With the internet nowadays, that's a dangerous thing to say too, because that's gonna be the quote people get out. Jamal Igle on Raging Bullets. Suck on this, losers.
But you know what? I realize every day how exceedingly lucky I am to have the family that I have, to have the career that I have, and just be in the position that I'm in right now. Working in comics, and being a dad and being a husband, and just it doesn't really get better than this. It really doesn't.
I think that's nice for us as fans to see, though, just a really happy, enjoyable. Because that has been my experience when I've gone to cons and I've met creators. People are just genuinely enjoying being in the industry. And things seem to be going well, and that's infectious for us because I have no talent in the direction of writing or drawing comics or anything like that. I just enjoy them, and to be able to get a chance to meet creators such as yourself at cons, and to see you guys enjoying creating these things that I get to enjoy, that are kind of my escape from my job.
Right.
And I love my job the same way that you're talking about how you love yours.
Oh, no, absolutely.
And it's really nice, though, because you guys give me so much, but to be able to see that you're getting so much out of it too is just it's kind of a nice little cyclical fun thing, and it's just a pleasure. So I want to thank you as always, because you've been just wonderful to us since we've known you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me. I always like being on your show. So yeah, I look forward to seeing you guys coming up to New York in February, or what's going on?
I don't see us missing that, do you?
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
Can't miss New York. We'll definitely see you in New York.
All right, man. So I will. If I don't talk to you before, I will see you guys in New York, and you have a good night.
You filthy criminals.
Hello, Sean and Jim and all the raging bulleteers out there. This is Johnny Salvo from the Reality Wasted podcast talking to you. What's going on, guys? I want to talk about one of the trades that I got at one of the conventions I went to, because Donnie cannot pass up 50% off trades. And I showed up back home with 2 book bags full and no room to put them. Anyway, we're going to talk about Batman in the 70s. It's a compilation graphic novel from all kinds of stories from 1970 to 1979. It's awesome because I'm going to tell you why. There's a lot of different things in this book, from pinup art from none other than Walter Simonson, people. Come on. A Batman pinup by Walter Simonson. When's the last time you saw that? The reason why I like this book is because this is when you're starting to see the grittier Batman. It's stepping away from the 60s whammo blammo Batman. Wasn't really my cup of tea, the 60s Batman. I know Jim feels the same way. I've heard through some of your podcasts about comics from the 60s, and, you know, the writing was a little too neato and groovy, and I'm kind of the same way. It's not my cup of tea. I'm not saying they're bad stories. It's just not my cup of tea. So anyway, it starts off, you got an introduction by the one and only Dennis O'Neil. You have all kinds of lovely pencils and inks through this book from the one and only Neil Adams, some Jim Aparo stuff, who, in all honesty, in the 80s was my Batman artist. And to see a young Jim Aparo in this, awesome. It's got about 11 different issues in here, I would say. It's got cover galleries for classic tales and a little synopsis of the story, cover galleries with villains on it. It's got the cast of characters cover gallery. Then it has a Batman and Robin pinups by Dick Giordano. Supervillains pinup by Jim Aparo. The Batman Family pinup by Dick Giordano. And I mean, come on, this is classic artwork, especially if you're a fan of Batman. I mean, these names are just like, forget it. A lot of stories written by Danny O'Neil. Let's see here. Oh, another thing that was cool, too, is they had the Bat books of the 70s, where it showed you, like, each book Batman was in the 70s, which, you know, there was Batman Detective, but he was also prominent in the Batman Family. You remember that book? I wish they'd bring that back. The Brave and the Bold, Justice League of America, and World's Finest. And it gives you a little synopsis about those books and what was going on. And this is all in between different stories. And they're mostly from Detective and Batman, although there is one fantastic Batman Family story in here called The Invader from Hell. It's from the Batman Family #1, and it's with Congresswoman Barbara Gordon. I did not know that. that she was ever a congresswoman. And then her intern, young Dick Grayson. And now neither one of them knows that one is Batgirl and one is Robin the Teen Wonder. So there is a couple of funny things. And the story takes place in Washington, D.C., and there is a couple of funny things in here because whenever, the protagonist shows up, they each have to find an empty office or a broom closet in in Congress and get changed. I guess there was no video cameras in the 70s, and then Batgirl says that she hid her. Good thing I hid my bad bat cycle on the side of the building, and it's like, this is a government building in Washington D.C. You're telling me they don't even have a security guard? Well, how big was this bush? Anyway, but yeah, it's about. This story just cracked me up because it's about Benedict Arnold. She's giving a speech to Congress about Benedict Arnold and what a traitor he was to the United States in the Revolutionary War, and who shows up but Benedict Arnold himself. And they just think he's a quacky, crazy, nutty guy who's dressed like Benedict Arnold. But it turns out it really is, and the devil brought back Benedict Arnold to enslave Batgirl and Robin. Wow. It was a good story, though. I mean, if you get past some of the stuff, that you get in modern comics today. But, I mean, that was pretty much that had a little bit of 60s cheese on it. But I have to tell you, there's a lot of good stories, and you could actually see the evolution of Batman. There's one story in here, and I was like, wow. Dennis O'Neil, let's take it down a little bit. You're writing him a little rough. But, and a lot of them, like in the movie The Dark Knight where he's living in the penthouse, a lot of these stories take place in there. It's just a lot of, it's a cool thing. If you want to learn a little bit about Batman history, you want to get some interesting stories written by some legendary writers, drawn by legendary artists, this is the way to go, man. Batman in the 70s. It's cover price of $19.95, but if you get it off in-stock trades, I bet you it's at a substantial discount. So, hey, if you're at a convention, half-off trades, look for it. You'll love it. This is Donnie Salvo from Reality Wasted. Hey, take it easy. Keep up the good work, guys. Bye-bye.
Did you pick up any of those? Like Batman in the 70s or any of that? I didn't know.
No, I didn't really. And I don't know. Part of me I look at some of those and I'm thinking part of me would like to, as a comic book collector, have these things, read them. Maybe I would get a better understanding for the older
kind
stuff.
Of a flavor for the era.
But here's the thing.
70s, though, he's making an interesting point here because he did address the fact, like, I remember when we first did Silver Age, you weren't, right. But I know some of the Silver Age you warmed up to.
Yeah, I started warming up to it, but I started looking, and there's a lot of current age trades I want to read that I don't have the time to read, so I'm like, why am I buying this stuff trades? That I know I'm not going to have time to read? I still haven't read Emperor Joker, and I keep saying I will read that. So I'm like...
I love that everyone's so fascinated whether or not you've read Emperor Joker. Because that one seems to be one that seems to keep popping up again.
So I'm like, I got to watch what trades I buy because... And I've bought a couple other trades that I've read over...
Emperor Joker up.
Well, here's the thing. Emperor Joker was moved to the top of the stack.
Okay.
And
but then the stack grew?
Then the Seven Soldiers, I'm reading that. Yeah. Then I picked up some more Y, I read some of that. Picked up some more 100 Bullets, read that. I'm like, no, Emperor Joker needs to be at the top of your stack, Jim. Discipline. But it doesn't always happen that way.
That's the hard part when you're newer to a universe. And let's forget just the universe. You're talking about some of the Vertigo stuff, Wildstorm, things like that. You're trying to get caught up on things. You never really can get caught up. Like, I'm buying all these showcases, and I'm getting to the point where I'm like, maybe I should get more selective on the showcases I'm buying just because of just the reality you're saying. At 500 pages a crack, the reality is when am I ever going to really read them all and just get the ones that I really want to read at the moment, maybe eBay some of the other ones because it becomes a financial expense at that point. But I'm kind of like, but it's nice to know that like when I'm in the mood, I can pull out the one that I like and all that. So I don't know.
I've started something else.
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to pick up hardcovers. And it's
the 70s stuff. You know what's some good hardcovers if you're looking for them? Batman Illustrated by Neil Adams.
Yeah.
Because he's talking about some of the classics. See, the 70s are when I started reading Batman. So a lot of that stuff is very contemporary for me still, just because I grew up in that era. It's and the Neil Adams stuff is very much so, the Ra's al Ghul stuff and you'll love that. But he had 3 hardcovers, and it was all remastered by Neil Adams.
Yeah, see, something like that is something I would like to pick up now. Like
they're doing his DC Universe stuff, too. They're doing 3 volumes of his work in the DC Universe outside of Batman as well. So that's interesting. I'm actually, because I'm such a Bat fanatic, I'm interested in picking up some of these, though.
Yeah,
I've got 2 of them. I've got the 50s and the 60s. But I haven't gotten the 70s, the 80s. I don't know if they did the 90s, but...
And it's something that I do think about. And I think when I get to the point where I've read all my trades, I've read all that stuff, it will be something I'll pick up just for the collectability of it, for the history of it. But right now, I have no intentions on buying it. But it's something that it does interest me, and I think it would be, I'm curious to see what, in stock trades, what kind of discounts they offer, because it's going to be some real cool discounts there. So it is something that I am curious about, and I'm glad to hear, that there is some fun stories in there, and there are some stuff that would make me groan, but I probably would like some of the stuff that I read.
Did you buy like the Batman Batcave trade that came out recently? Secrets of the Batcave?
No, I don't think I did.
This is kind of like that. What it is it's these 60s, 70s, and 40s and 50s, these collections, they aren't chronological. I mean, I think they are, they're chronological in the way they're put together, but they're not like issue 131, 132, 133, 134. They're selected stories from that era to kind of give you a flavor and a feel for what the era was like. Okay. So they'd pick from different, so you get a complete story from each one, but they're not chronological issues, so to speak. Okay. So if you're saying, well, geez, I'd love to know what Batman was like in the 70s. These are, selections of different writers and artists from the era, so you get kind of an idea of what was the 70s like for Batman. What was the 80s like for Batman, that type of thing. So it's nice for somebody who's saying, you know what, it's actually kind of nice for someone like you, just in the sense, I'm not trying to push you into that, but I'm just saying, not just you, anybody out there who's saying, hey, I'm new to Batman, I got too many trades to read, but I would love to read an era of Batman, like the 70s, and see what it was like then. You can jump on this and not have to pick up, like for me, I read the illustrated by Neil Adams, but it was 3 hardcovers. So I read all 3 hardcovers. That's a lot of reading. If you're like, I can't devote myself to that amount of time, you could do this, and you get a little Neil Adams, you get a little Jim Aparo, you'll get just a little bit of everybody. You get the Batman family stories and stuff like that. I love the stuff where he was talking about the fact that Penthouse was very much in there, because I had the Mego Wayne Foundation, talking about Mego again, the Wayne Foundation set up. I know I've got that somewhere at my dad's, and I'm dying to figure out where it was at, because I have the whole Wayne Foundation for Mego as a full-sized 3
Dude, you gotta
and
find
a half
that.
floor. I do, because I would have it hooked up here.
Yeah.
And it had a working elevator.
And then we can get the characters and, we'll take them out of the boxes so we can play with it.
Right, but we'll have one of them so you don't get like uncomfortable. We'll have one of each of them in the box still.
Yeah. We'll have the box character.
Right, exactly. But I'm dying to find that, because I went into my attic at my dad's, I couldn't find it, so I don't know. I'm hoping it didn't get lost somewhere in the shuffle, because it's almost complete. I think there's a couple missing parts, but eBay, you see parts for those things all the time. So I'm like, but it might be one of those eventually at some point I might try to buy again if I can't find it, because I would love Mego stuff. I would love to have that set up. So that would be one I would be willing to seek out. But it was wonderful because it had a cardboard background to it with each floor, and had a Bat computer floor and things like that. But it was his whole. At that time, he was living in the Wayne Foundation Tower, and the penthouse suite. So that's where you got to kind of see the whole Batman setup. Actually, this digest that we got sent to take a look at for a future, this one about the Bat Murderer from the Best of Blue Ribbon. In the back of it, it actually
cool.
has a diagram of the Wayne Foundation building, showing the whole layout of everything,
nice.
which is really nice, and the underground to the Bat Cave and stuff like that. Very cool. Very, very cool stuff. So, yeah, I like when they do. We don't see a lot of cross sections in comics anymore.
Dude, that's cool.
Isn't that cool? The plans
Yeah.
and stuff. Like, I wish they would do this more often. Like the layout of. I'd love to see the layout of the Wayne Manor right now. That type of thing. That type of stuff I get into. So little geeky things like that, but I would love to have that. So that's where those trades work for people like the Secrets of the Batcave. That's not chronological stories. Again, it's selected stories involving the Batcave that are throughout the entire history of the Batman. I'm liking, for me, because I like to read them cover to cover in chronological order. I love the Batman. What's the one I'm thinking of? They're the cheaper trades that are going in chronological order from the start of the Golden Age straight on through. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Chronicles. The Batman Chronicles and Superman Chronicles. I'm getting both of those, and I'm loving those. Full color reprints. They're nice, easy to read, manageable ones, but the Batman one especially, because some of those classic issues I never have gotten an opportunity to read, and to be able to kind of read that.
Yeah, this is your chance.
Batman's roots. It's great. So, these trades, I'm glad to see more varieties in the trade collections. But I'm with you. I'm building this stockpile of trades, and I'm like, when am I ever going to read these? It's part of the reason why I went back to monthly on some of my Vertigos, because I'm like, I'm just stockpiling these trades. I'm not reading them. So I find that I don't read the trades.
Yeah, see, yeah.
So the monthlies I'm better off with, because the monthlies seem to be more portable or something, which is insane, because they're really not. But, I don't know if it's just my own,
Your own
issues.
little neuroses, who knows?
It probably is my own little neuroses. So I just, the floppies tend to work better for me, but that just tends to be a thing. So, but I'm glad that and that's the Reality Wasted podcast. And actually, the many podcasts we've had a chance to, our friends that we've had a chance to shout out on this one, I'll have in our show notes. So definitely please check them out, because they're definitely friends of the show. And there you go.
Holy caffeine!
Joining us this episode is Boys of Steel creator Marc Tyler Nobleman. And Marc, I want to welcome you to the show. We had the great opportunity to meet you at the Mid-Ohio Con, and I can't tell you how much I'm really enjoying your book.
I really appreciate that. Thanks for having me on.
Marc, I just want to jump right in, and the first thing is, first of all, I loved the book, because for me, I grew up knowing who Siegel and Shuster were as far as they were the creators of Superman, but if you had asked me anything else about them, like how that whole process came about and everything like that, I've been reading comics my whole life, but I couldn't answer that question as far as who were they and how did this whole come about. What led you to get interested in doing something relating to their life and their background and how this all came about?
Part of it is exactly for the reason you just said, that everybody knows Superman, but even some of his most fervent fans don't know much about where he came from. So that is a story that needs to be told, and from a commercial perspective, it's a gap in the market, and that's always worth trying to plug. It hasn't been told in a standalone volume for any age. Their story's been part of larger comics histories and more extensive monographs or story sort of encyclopedic books about Superman, but they've never been the focus of their own book. So that was part of the reason, and the other probably more obvious part is, I choose subjects that I'm passionate about. If I'm going to be spending months or years of my life writing, researching, promoting something, then I certainly have to love what I'm writing about. And I've been a Superman fan since I was a kid. Started with Superman the movie, and then went on to comics, and that was how I learned about Siegel and Shuster in the first place, because I saw the Time magazine 50th anniversary of Superman issue in 1988, and that's probably where I don't know for sure, but I'm assuming that's where I first read a little bit about Siegel and Shuster. And so the idea had just been percolating in me since then. Thought that I would do it as a screenplay when I got out of college, and started down that path, but it got sidetracked, and then when I ended up in children's publishing, it dawned on me that that would be the perfect medium to tell the story that I wanted, the version of the story that I wanted to tell. So that's how it came about.
Yeah, you could really tell this was just not it wasn't just a piece of work for you. There was a definite passion behind this, and I had my mom read the book, and when she got done, she's like, "Wow, this is a Superman fan," and she just got it just from reading the picture book. And then I showed her the picture that you had of yourself in there in the Superman costume when you're a little kid, and I was like, nothing says longtime fan than dressing up as suit, including that type of picture in the book.
Oh yeah. Well, for one thing, that was one of at least, let me think here, 3 times that I dressed as Superman. But the third time I was in either middle or high school, and I was too cool to be Superman straight up, so I was Clark Kent with, the suit. I thought it was so original at the time, but I'm sure, hundreds of kids were doing this. Had just a suit on with the shirt open and a Superman t-shirt underneath, so it was my, way of compromising. And it was actually my editor who I showed her the photo, and she was the one who said, let's use that as your author photo. So that was that was a sweet idea, I thought.
I actually read this to my students today, and it was one of those things, it was just kind of an afterthought, because I enjoyed the book so much myself, and I am a third-grade teacher, and, we teach the different genres. So I figured today, I'm like, you know what, we're going to be doing biographies anyway, so why not, obviously, a biography about 2 people from Ohio? Kind of makes sense, seeing as we're in Ohio. Yeah. And I can't tell you how wonderful this was, because we're doing connections with the kids right now where they can, they're connecting to themselves and they're connecting to other texts that they've read. And we really just had a very rich discussion. One student mentioned a room with a table above their garage where they were watching children playing, and he likes to go in there when he likes to draw or write stories himself. So he immediately connected to the story with that, and I was like, oh, wow, that's cool. And yeah. Another student connected to, they didn't know who Buck Rogers was, but connected to the fact that they like science fiction stories with time travel. So they connected to that with it, and the kids were connecting with characters they created themselves. So it was really just a fun, rich discussion. But the great thing I like about this book, and one of the compliments I want to give you, the reason why it was an afterthought for me is I enjoyed this so much that I wasn't thinking to myself, children's book, I was thinking me book. Yeah. And that is probably one of the highest compliments I can give you is it was very accessible to my students. Jim just mentioned it was accessible to his mom. Very accessible to me. This is a book I would highly recommend to anybody, and I applaud you for your approach on the whole thing as far as really focusing on who these guys are, as opposed to getting into some of the stuff that's been happening later in their life. You do get into that in the latter part of the book, which is great. I loved the text section at the end where we really got to kind of delve into that. But what for me was the highlight of this book is I felt like I really knew these guys at the end, and like they were accessible to me.
Well, that is certainly a high compliment, which I will greedily accept, and I appreciate that. I think of it as an all-ages book. My editor sometimes reminds me that I published it with a children's publisher, which of course I did. But as you noted, I did write it with a larger audience in mind. In fact, if you're writing anything about superheroes, you're only enhancing the project if you think like that. It's certain, like I said, it fills a gap for young people because there's never been a biography about these guys for that age, but it's certainly, it's not written in such a way that it would bore adults. In fact, you guys are probably a little younger than I am, but going back maybe 30 years, certainly earlier than that, if you were to look at picture books about people, picture book biographies, so many of them would start off with George Washington was born on February 17 in Virginia. It was just so pedestrian and so linear, and just that there was no attempt to make the prose fresh or fun, or even think about the story in a different way than just birth to death. So that's one of the beauties of this format. It is limited. You do have limited word count, but that allows for a lot of creativity. I mean, this book, as you've noticed, spans 10 years, 1930 to 1940. And then I do cover the rest of their lives in the afterword, but it doesn't start off with or even mention anything about where these guys were born or anything like that. I just needed to stick to the key beats about Superman. In fact, some people have said to me, you know that Siegel and Schuster did other things, right? And I said, of course I know that, but, my book is about their crowning accomplishment. So I didn't have room or inclination to include all that other stuff. There's other places that people can look for that, but this was just a very tight, stylized story that focused on their creation of Superman.
Did you find yourself connecting with them along the way? Because I liked the fact that they were two shy fellas who connected with each other because they found that they had so much in common interest-wise. They both felt like outsiders in their own way and wanted to create something that would take advantage of their imagination. Because I found that just incredibly charming, and I connected with them immediately because, certainly experiences I had growing up as well. Did you find yourself connecting with them in some way as you were writing this?
Sure, in some way. I mean, I felt like an outsider as a kid. I think we all did at various times, but I was not a jock or, homecoming king or anything like that. And I was creative. I was a doodler. So I had some connection with them on that regard, but they were quite extreme. Jerry was and I didn't quite get into this in the book, but, he was such a passionate guy that he could get so worked up about something that people just couldn't relate to him when he was talking about science fiction or, any of his interests. That he would just, it's endearing, but, a lot of people just couldn't relate to this level of passion. And Joe, as I do say in the book, was just so shy. I've read stories of him on dates where after Superman, where he was, he would sort of awkwardly, I guess, talk about Superman, and then once that topic was exhausted, he didn't really know what to talk about. So I don't relate quite that way. But yeah, the story of friends, of course, I love stories about friends and friendships, even more than stories about families, because friendships are chosen, whereas families, of course, aren't. It's just a very endearing story about two sort of lost souls who found each other and had this incredible optimism about a character in a time where there really wasn't a lot of people around them that showed that optimism paid off. So I did appreciate that bond that they shared. It was more Jerry. Jerry was certainly the driving force, but Joe was there too.
What was interesting to me is the whole process that they went through, not only into creating the character, but coming back from failure, reworking a concept, and being patient enough to get it published. I mean, like a 3-year concept to pull that together. I was like, wow.
Yeah, and that's for me is probably the pivotal theme of the book, is that these guys had tremendous persistence. And what's even more amazing about that is that they were truly confident that that this character would not only sell but be huge. There's evidence of that. There's written evidence of that, in 1936 and possibly earlier, but certainly 1936. They were just that confident. And you could look back and say, oh, it was just like I say in the afterword, maybe it was just a charming boast, and they didn't really have the thought behind it that this could really be. But they did. They really did think this was the next big thing.
It was kind of like they had like that Superman quality to them, because that's something we always see in Superman. No matter how much he's getting beat down, how much of adversity, he always rises up. He never quits. It's that constant perseverance that's one of the cool things about Superman. You actually see it in these creators, because they got doors slammed in their faces, told no, and it was just, you could very easily get dissuaded, but like, no, we got to persevere. This is what we got to do. And that was something that really just, I was like, yeah, I like that. And especially putting it in a children's book, the show that you continue, you drive on. Even when someone says no, keep going. You got to be like Superman. Be like Superman. I ate it up.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you did, and that is all. That's a side of them that a lot of people don't know. It does take great strength to be rejected and keep going and keep trying. It takes tremendous strength, and that's certainly great parallel to Superman. And I don't know if they ever would have thought about it like that. It's a shame that, I don't know that anyone ever asked them that. That's a lost piece of history now, but it certainly is a great discussion point. And I think it's valid that they really did have this noble quality of driving on despite adversity, which of course Superman embodies as well. So I agree with that. By the way, I wanted to say, just before I forget, Sean, when you talked about reading it to your kids, if you choose tomorrow, you can have a little fun with them and ask them to try to guess how many times the word Superman appears in the text, the story proper, not the afterword, just the illustrated portion.
Actually, I know the answer to that, because that was going to be one of my questions I had for you, that I really liked what you did.
Okay.
Wait, so you already know, but I
already know the answer.
So you're telling me there's a twist to it?
Yes.
Well, Not necessarily, but just they heard the story. So it's a book about Superman. How many times did I name Superman in the text?
Is there significance to the number?
Well, no, it's 0. He never says Superman in it. I love that.
Oh,
he's got super in there a couple times, especially like, yeah, we put an S on his chest for super, but they never said, I love that. I was like, oh, and I didn't catch that till like the third read.
Well, there is a significance to the number then. Because
I'm impressed that you caught that. I wouldn't have caught that if I wasn't me. That's very good.
I'm impressed that you caught that. You know what? Then I should probably ask them after that, how many times did I say Superman during it?
Right.
Because I was pausing for discussion points as I was reading the story to them, and I had to have said Superman probably 750 times. That's interesting.
I'll tell you, I honestly caught it. It was as I said, the third time reading through, and it's that scene where they're actually creating. We'll put an S on his chest for super. I distinctly remembered reading for Superman, and then the third time reading, I'm like, wait, they just said super, and that's when it dawned. Like, I wonder how many times. That's when I went back to the beginning, and I'm looking. I'm like, oh my god, he didn't put it in there at all. Outstanding.
It was a total. I didn't set out to do that. I saw as I got to that scene that it would be possible, and there was really no. I can't lie and say that there was some greater reason for that. I just thought it would be a fun little experiment, and it worked. I mean, of course, if I was writing beyond 1940, it would have gotten tedious and it would have been very difficult. But since it ends a couple pages after the creation of Superman, it worked. And actually, even though I say I wrote it for all ages, that was one instance where I was thinking a lot about the kids. It'd be fun to go to schools, read this, and then ask them that. And I've already started to do that and see what people say. So I've gotten everything from 0, some people do get it, to some guy on Saturday where I spoke said 18. I don't know where he got that from. So it's just a fun little game.
Oh, that's very cool. Thank you for sharing that, because that is something I will definitely do.
Yeah, see what they say.
Was it easy to gather facts about Siegel and Schuster? I mean, or were there some challenges to it? How did that process go about?
Well, there's always challenges in research. In their case, since they're both gone, of course, I couldn't talk with them. And I did try to reach the Siegel family, and did not hear back. But that was 3 years ago, and I've been told that they don't respond to anybody. They just, because of the litigation, they just have to be ultra careful with, they basically can't talk to anybody. So I relied mostly on interviews that they gave. All the dialogue in the book that's quoted, that's all lifted directly from interviews. If I did that if I put dialogue in this kind of book and it was made up, I would be doing a major disservice to the book, because librarians in particular would not consider it nonfiction, and therefore I would get bad reviews and I wouldn't get stocked in libraries, and that's a huge market. So, I wouldn't do that anyways, but I did specifically want to make sure that I gave attribution to the dialogue as being from interviews. And as far as other research, the most interesting research actually all happened after almost 2 years after I'd sold the manuscript. It was last winter, January 2007, when I finally got the chance to go to Cleveland for the first time to do I went there to do photo research, to just take for 4 days, just go to all the sites that are still standing, which aren't many, and photograph them for the illustrator to give him images for reference as he's drawing, and try to find photos of the sites that are no longer standing. And while I was there, I made some pretty startling discoveries. The first of which was that Michael Siegel, Jerry's father, was not shot to death. That's the story that's told in Men of Tomorrow, the great book by Gerard Jones that came out 4 years ago, the adult prose book about the history of American comics, which does largely, I'm sure you guys know it. It focuses largely. Siegel and Schuster are major players in that book, and that was one of the big hooks of the book when it came out, was that finally we hear what happened to Jerry Siegel's father, except he got it a little wrong. And he's the first to admit it. He's a great guy, a gracious guy, and he's helped me with my research. And the reason that he got that wrong is because the Siegel family, actually told some of the kids that Michael Siegel was shot. And I don't know why. I personally would think it would be better to tell them that he had a heart attack than he was shot, especially since that was the truth. But I don't know why they did that. But that's what they did, and that's how that particular version filtered into Men of Tomorrow. But I was in Cleveland looking through old newspapers, and saw, it wasn't an obituary, but it was a blurb about Michael Siegel's death, and it said that he had died of heart failure. And I'm thinking, how could they get that wrong? I mean, this was 6 years before Superman, so it isn't like Jerry Siegel was famous and there could have been some incentive for a cover-up or, something like that. It was just another merchant who died during the Depression. There were, hundreds a day probably around the country, these sad circumstances. So I figured that had to be true. So I then requested the coroner's report, the police report, and I got a copy of his death certificate too. And all 4 of those documents, 3 of which I've posted on my blog, say that it was heart failure and a gun was not even fired. So that was one of the big discoveries that I made. And it doesn't change the fact that Jerry Siegel lost his father to a crime, but it's not as violent. And it's certainly I'm happy that my telling is authentic. I originally wrote it with the murder, with the gunshot, and I'm so thankful that I found that in time to change it, because I would have been very upset with myself if it had gone to press with that fact wrong. And then the other big discovery that I made, big to me anyway, and big to people that I've talked to so far, some fans, is I found 2 photos actually of the building in which Joe Shuster lived in 1934, the year that they created Superman. Jerry Siegel's house is still standing, and you guys probably know it's been in the news this summer because they're raising money to restore it. But I was surprised that no one ever bothered to think about where Joe lived. I mean, Superman was conceived in Jerry's house but finalized in Joe's. So why did no one ever go look for that? Or if they did, why did we never hear about it? So because it had never been published, I assumed I couldn't just walk into the Historical Society or the library and say, do you have a photo of Joe Shuster's building? Because chances are they might even just say, who's Joe Shuster? Let alone, no, we don't. So I went to the Historical Society and the Cleveland State University Archives and eventually the public library, which I thought was my least likely, I would have the least likely chance of success there because libraries I think of as being more general. But that's where I found it. I was just looking through photos. They had them organized by street. You say I'm looking for archival photos of Amore Avenue, which is where Joe lived, and that's all they got. They don't have any catalogs any more than that, not by year, not by street address. You just look through a box of photos, not even on computer. And I looked through the whole box and did not find any photos. By the way, I should say that these photos are all in Cleveland anyway. They take photos of buildings that have a violation, like an awning that's too low or a doorway that's obstructed or whatever the case may be. And that's what some of those photos are. The others are photos of buildings before they were demolished. Apparently they document every building before they tear it down. So there were no pictures in that Amore folder. And then I remembered that this apartment building was on the corner of another. It was on a corner, so there was a cross street, which is called Parkwood. So on a lark, I said, "Can I look through the Parkwood photos?" And sure enough, one of the backs of the photos said 998 Parkwood, a.k.a. 10905 Amore, which was bingo, which was Joe's address. So that was a photo from 1974. It was the pre-demolition photo. It's on my blog, and it's the first known, maybe one of the only photos of the building in which Superman was first drawn and finalized. So that was a huge moment for me, and I actually was alone in the room. It was a huge room of tables and research areas, and I went up to the only person there, which was a guy working there, and I said, "You're probably not going to care, but I just wanted someone to know that I just found a picture of the building that Superman was created in." And he tried to care, but I don't think he cared all that much. So, sorry, that was a long story, but it was.
No, it's honestly, the only reason why I was so quiet, it was such an interesting story, and I got an opportunity to hear you tell that story at Middle HowCon. I loved hearing it again because it actually leads into a nice. One of the things I really wanted to mention too is your wonderful blog, and I encourage people when you pick up the book, if you haven't, or if you have picked up the book, it's noblemania.blogspot.com. I will have it in the show notes and on the website, so you can click right on it and go to it. But it really, to me, it's like the book and beyond. It's like this wonderful interactive. You can read the book and enjoy that, but then to go to your blog and be able to interact with that as well. I'm still making my way through the amount of rich content you've got on your blog relating to your journey to create this book. I'm eating it up. So, I mean,
thank you very much.
Yeah, I can't thank you enough for putting up the blog, because to me it's like a bonus. I'm like, I got to enjoy this book, and now there's like so much more.
Well, DVDs get special bonus features, but books don't, so that's why we have blogs.
And I can't encourage people enough to check that out because it was wonderful.
I don't know how interesting you'll find this story, but I almost grew up in this neighborhood.
Oh.
Yeah, back when my parents were like at the end of their dating, right as they were getting married, that region was a very Slovenian, Slovak neighborhood, and my uncle Clary actually lived there, and he was trying to convince my dad, when he and my mom got married, to move into their neighborhood, and it ended up when they actually did get married that the city I grew up in Euclid, they got a nice deal on a house, so they moved there. But so I came this close to almost living in the neighborhood that they grew up in.
So the Glenville neighborhood.
Yeah, the Glenville neighborhood.
Do you remember the street?
No, and I even asked them before coming over, hey, what street did Uncle Clary live on? And they're like, and Mom and Dad were kind of like arguing back and forth. It was no, so we're not exactly sure which one, but it was definitely in Glen. It was definitely in Glenville. So,
well, that'd be easy enough to track down. I mean, I've done this already with this book and with the book that I worked on Bill Finger, the uncredited co-creator of Batman. You can just go to the library and look through, if you really want to know, look through old phone books. You'll probably find it pretty quickly.
One of the things that I wanted to ask you about, this book was illustrated by Ross McDonald, and I really loved your text, the illustrations. How did Ross McDonald getting involved in this book come about? How did that...
Once I'd sold the manuscript, both my editor and I made lists of illustrators that we would like, and then we would go back and forth. I would eliminate some because I, for various reasons, didn't like their style for this subject or whatever the case may be. And my editor eliminated some for various reasons. Either they were not available or too expensive or not interested, or I don't even know what most of the reasons were, to be honest. And finally, one of the names overlapped was Ross McDonald, and I'd never worked with him before, but his reputation majorly precedes him. He's been doing this for years, and he's very respected in the business, and both children's publishing and other print illustration like magazines and newspapers. So his style, a lot of people say, is very similar to Joe Shuster's, and that's his regular style. I don't know if he would cite Joe Shuster as a specific influence, but certainly the 30s and the Art Deco and that whole comic book feel, that's his thing. So he was totally, from what I hear, very keen on this subject, and we were lucky to get him. I mean, he's a huge asset to the book, and to be honest, I've never even met him. We didn't work directly together. That's how they do it. The editors keep the writer and artist separate, and we've emailed. Once he was done with his work, we were allowed to then get in touch, so we've emailed, and we're going to meet in person for the first time this upcoming Saturday in New York at a book event, but we have not yet even talked on the phone, so that's how they do it.
Well, that's fantastic. I didn't realize that it worked on that level.
Yeah.
One of the things I enjoyed when we saw you at Mid-Ohio was you were talking about some of the authenticity in the illustrations in the book, even down to like the window, for example, where Shuster was looking out of the window.
Yeah.
Did you send him that material? How did that come about then?
Yes, all the photos that I took in Cleveland, I put on a disc and sent to him, or sent to the editor who sent it to him. And I gave a page-by-page breakdown of what I would like the illustrations to be, but it was a guideline. And he was hired for a reason. He has a vision too, so he is entitled to take or leave my suggestions, as any illustrator can do in this circumstance. So luckily, he used a lot of my material, and I was thrilled with that. And that was one of the ones that's as you saw in Ohio. That was one of my favorite parts of the book, is that he actually did put the authentic window and the view out the window in there. And again, as I've said, it isn't like there'd be more than a handful of readers that would ever know the difference, but I just like that it's authentic, and the more I talk about it, the more people see that that's what it really looked like, and that's what a book about something historical is meant to do. It's meant to bring you back to this point as best it can. So I think that's a really special little layer of the book, that's how Jerry Siegel's window looked. So I'm really thrilled that Ross did that.
I thought there was those kind of details when I was hearing you speak at Mid-Ohio that really drew me to seek you out and to pick up the book and to get you on here to talk to you about it, because I think it's something for people listening to this, if they didn't know about it, they haven't had a chance to pick it up themselves. I think it's little things like that and just your love for this material that I think any Superman fan who's listening to this right now should really go out and grab this book and pick it up, because it's something really that's tailored to people who really care about this character. And I think it's really great that you are putting an accessible biography on shelf of a group of comic book pioneers. Because you mentioned Bill Finger. You're going to be doing the Bill Finger one, and I saw that on your site as well. And I'm really excited for that because I enjoyed this one so much. And I'm like, wow, there's another person who I know through the internet and stuff like that, little bits and pieces about, and certainly know why. I'm a huge Batman fan. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I know, obviously, we're not at a stage right now where you're publishing it, but that's your next project, right?
That is, well, I've got several projects in circulation, and some of them aren't even books, but that is the one that I started not immediately, but first after this one, and that's, I'd say probably at this point the one I'm the most eager to get done. And it would be, the Siegel and Schuster book is the first standalone book about them, but they have been written about in other books, as has Bill Finger. But Bill Finger has been written about very little. He remains, it's incredible how unknown he essentially is, given that he's created what, most people would say is one of the most iconic characters in the world and probably the second most iconic superhero in the world after Superman. It's staggering, really, that there's been only 2 published photos of him in 70 years, and most people don't even know what his real name is or anything about his personal life or what happened to him when he died. These were all details that were just waiting to be discovered, and so that's what I set out to do, and I did do that. So now the question is, can I interest a publisher in that? It seems like a no-brainer to me, even more than Superman. I mean, Dark Knight is a juggernaut, and it's not like that was the first indication that Batman is popular. He regularly outsells Superman. He has had more action figures made of him than any other DC character, even more than Superman. Superman is the American icon, but Batman is right there next to him. And, the story of Bill Finger needs to be told. So I'm really hoping that this book gets picked up.
Well, speaking as a fan myself, not only of your Boys of Steel book, but just of Batman as a character in general and getting to know more information, I am salivating at the thought of a Bill Finger book. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed as well. And certainly, as that comes to fruit, we would love to have you back on to talk about that as we get closer to it as well.
I would jump at the chance. I hope it happens. Thank you.
A couple things I want to make sure I shout out. I mentioned your noblemania.blogspot.com. I also want to mention mtncartoons.com, and I'll put links to that as well. I literally just got to that over the last 2 days. You have a whole site of cartoons that you've done.
Yeah, I'm a lapsed cartoonist as well. I drew magazine cartoons, gag cartoons as they're called, I've been doing it since '98. I haven't been doing it much in the last few years. I've been focusing mostly on my writing, but the site is still up. It hasn't been updated in 3 years, but it's still there. And my goal for that was just to draw cartoons until I got one into the New Yorker magazine. That was my goal. But I was accumulating so many cartoons and so many New Yorker rejections that I decided I couldn't just justify the time unless I started sending them out to other places. So I found myself a cartoonist and did that pretty intensely from about '98 till about 2005 or so, and then I just got so wrapped up with my writing that I still license cartoons, what they call inventory, but I'm not regularly creating new cartoons like I used to. I may come back to it, but I'm not doing it right now.
That was interesting, though, because on the site it does list all of the publications that you've been associated with that, and I was just like, wow. And you've done like 70 books.
Yes, but that they're all over the map. There are some of them that I'm never referring to. And I don't say that. That's actually not fair to certain. In a way, a lot of the books that I have done, especially earlier in my career, were for the school and library market. So they were parts of series, like a book, series of books on holidays or whatnot. So, I did write them. I'm proud of everything I've written, but it's not representative of my writing. It had to fit a certain, had to be a certain style and fit a certain format of a series. And it, when you read it, you would see no trace of a style. It had to be straightforward. So that was my day job. That has been my day job while I'm trying to develop books like Boys of Steel and the Bill Finger book, which are passion projects, riskier, but, possibly greater reward and greater profile.
Well, that's what's interesting. It's I'm just as hearing you talk, and one of the things I found so interesting about taking a look at your sites is just that you have this deep passion for just being involved in writing and all that, and just how you've got your hands in a lot of different places in order to keep that process going. It's a nice success story, and that was I'm really appreciated as someone who enjoyed your work how accessible you've made yourself to somebody who's picked up and enjoyed a piece of your work to be able to then go and learn a little bit about you, the process towards creating the books, what you're doing to keep yourself. I mean, this to me was, I'm like, wow, this is just really a very interactive experience from reading a book.
You. I'm glad to hear that. I want that. I don't want to sound. I didn't really have a creative mentor at any. I mean, I had various mentors in various parts of my life, but no one defining creative mentor. And I didn't feel 10 years ago that I had anybody that I could really ask about the process. I mean, this was just pretty much at the dawn of the internet, at least in my world. And you could email people, but there were certainly no blogs yet. And I like to tell these stories because there are lots of other people out there like me who like to know that that's how it goes. That's the path. This is what it feels like to get rejected, but this is what it feels like to keep going and triumph. And this is what it feels like to have a great idea to market your book, and you push really hard for it, it implodes. So that's what I use my blog for, is to share these stories that I personally also would eat out to some. There's probably other writers doing it. I just haven't. I don't know any offhand, but I think of myself as doing what I wish I had access to 10, 12, 15 years ago.
I think it's great, though, because it also then makes you accessible to your readers. And I think it's like a bonus out of this that just sounds like you didn't originally think would happen. And I'm like, just as a reader right now, I'm like, wow, this is really cool. So thank you for that. One thing I want to say to our listeners, we have on our show various times talked about all ages material. DC's done a new line of Johnny DC books that they've been redoing Power of Shazam. They've done Tiny Titans, things like that are really all ages material that a lot of our adult listeners are enjoying just as much as people looking for books for their family. Boys of Steel fits in that category. It's very charming. It's very rich. It's got a lot of depth to it, and it's accessible. And it's definitely something I would say for any of our listeners right now that have jumped on board the series that I've mentioned, this is a book for you, and you need to grab this book and pick it up if you missed it, because I was very surprised at just how much depth was in this, and it really gave me an appreciation. And like I said, I'm hoping the Bill Finger book goes for you, and I can't thank you enough for coming on. Is there anything, Marc, that you want to shout out or get out there that, or is there anything that maybe you want to mention that we didn't get in? Because I want to make sure to get everything out there that you wanted to mention.
No, you guys did great. You allowed me to cover a lot of the things that I love to talk about. The book is obviously available anywhere books are sold. You can buy it online, or if it's not in your local store, you certainly can order it through them. And I hope some of your listeners take you up on that. And check it out. It's been an honor to do it, and it's a greater honor to see people appreciate it. So.
And I encourage listeners, if you pick up the book or if you have read the book, please either in our forum along with this episode or through voicemails, call us up, leave a message, let us know what you thought of the book and how you enjoyed it, because I think that's always fun to take the discussion then and continue it being an interactive discussion beyond just this episode. So that'd be fantastic.
That'd be great. And also, since you're in Ohio, I don't know if you know how your listeners break down state by state, but I'll be I'm leaving on October 26th to do 2 weeks of promotion for the book. The first 5 days are in San Francisco. The event open to the public there is on October 26th. It's at the Cartoon Art Museum. I'm speaking there in the afternoon. You see the same presentation that you guys saw in Ohio. And all this is on my blog. I've got a list of appearances on my blog. And then from November 1st through November 10th, I'll be ping-ponging around Ohio, mostly in Cleveland, speaking at the Historical Society and the Cleveland Public Library, the Malta Museum of Jewish Heritage, and several other venues. So if you're in Ohio, check out the list on the blog, and please come to one of those events. I really would love to have a good audience.
Yeah, you mentioned the Maltz Museum. I saw a bunch of articles on that in the Plain Dealer, the local paper here, about they have this comic book exhibit of the Jewish Golden Age creators, and I guess they're saying they have a bunch of original artwork and some original scripts from Siegel and Schuster there, and I saw that, I was like, man, I gotta check that out, because that sounds like a really neat exhibit as well.
Yeah, well, do you live in Cleveland now?
Yeah. That's where both Sean and I live.
Oh, okay, both of you guys. I wasn't sure who lived. Okay, so, well, come to the Maltz on November 5th. That's when I'm speaking there. I think the presentation starts at 7. You've seen some of it, but there's more. I think I'm going to be doing something expanded that night. And before that, you'd be able to check out the exhibit.
Well, and I will say right now, I'm definitely going to be there. So if any of our listeners would like to meet up and go there to get a chance to check this out, and definitely please let us know, and we would love to meet up with some people there, because I've definitely been wanting to go see it anyway. So now this is the perfect time to do that and get to say hello to you again. So
yeah, I would love to. Please do.
It's the Maltz, Maltz Museum of Jewish Heritage. It's in Beechwood, Ohio. If anybody's wondering where it is and want to find it, you can just hop on the internet and find it very quickly.
Yeah. Great.
Perfect.
Thank you.
I want to definitely thank you again. This was absolutely a pleasure. It was great meeting you at Mid-Ohio, and we'll see you on November 5th, so that's fantastic.
Yeah,
cool.
See you in a couple of weeks. Thank you guys very much.
Can Batman escape? One hint, the worst is yet to come.
Want to give a shout-out to a new Legion podcast featuring Rick Croxton from the forums.
Welcome to the future. Our future. And soon to be your future. Well, until the next retcon, or reboot. Welcome to the Legion of Substitute Podcasters, forged in the past by Tales of the Future, the Legion of Substitute Podcasters. And now, the secret origin of the Legion of Substitute Podcasters. Someone should do a podcast about the Legion of Superheroes.
Yes. Yes, they should.
We should ask the guys at CGS to do it.
But aren't they kind of busy?
Oh, no. It would be a great idea.
I'm not so sure about this. I mean, they have the weekly podcasts they do. They're planning all their con appearances, setting up interviews with comic talent, scheduling the next Super Show, and restocking the bar for their next anniversary episode.
Oh, come on. It'll be an easy sell.
Let's go in and tell them about it. Wow, they are tough.
What are you talking about? We never got past Tasha and the Boggs.
Choke. Now our dreams will never come true.
No, wait. I'm having a flash of precognition.
Really?
No, but we need a plot device to get to the point, don't we?
True that.
I see us talking across wide distances with other Legion fans. I see us doing it, Paul and Rick. Don't you see? We're the Legion of Super Podcasters.
We can't be the Legion of Super Podcasters. We were just kicked out of the club.
Then we'll be the Legion of Substitute Podcasters. One day we'll prove that we are worthy.
Yes!
We've heard that people have a tough time understanding Legion of Superheroes. It's hard to keep track of which lad, last boy, or girl is which. And what the hell's a Xanthu anyway? Let us make that a lot easier for you. Join Paul French, Rick Croxton, Darren Noel, and our Mystery Legionnaire for a fun ride through the history of the future. www.legionofsubstitutepodcasters.com.
Our sponsor for this episode is DCBService.com, where you can pick up Supergirl number 36, the new Krypton issue, written by Sterling Gates, art by Jamal Igle and Keith Champagne, with a cover by Joshua Middleton. There's a variant cover also by Chris Sprouse. New Krypton, Part 8. In the aftermath of Action Comics number 872, the city of Kandor is rocked to its core, and Supergirl angrily unleashes her full power. You're going to want to check this out. It's regularly $2.99, 40% off, only $1.79. And that variant edition is also available for $6 if you want to get that as well. Action Comics and Superman are both available at the same price as regularly $2.99, 40% off, only $1.79, both with variant covers, also available for $6. So it's great if you want to get any variant covers, you want to pick up the issues of all of them, save them at that discount. That 40% off is fantastic, especially now that we've got the triangle numbering. This is a great chance to save money if you're previously reading only Action Comics, but now you're jumping on board all of them. Save some money doing it and go about this way. So this is fantastic. Whatever your shipping preferences, your bag and boarding preferences, DCBService.com accommodates your collecting needs. Don't forget our in-stock trades book of the month for October, chosen by Simulated Stereo, is Doom Patrol Volume 2, The Painting That Ate Paris trade paperback, written by Grant Morrison with art by Richard Case and John Nyberg, with a cover by Brian Boland. It's a second collection from superstar writer Grant Morrison and his groundbreaking run on Doom Patrol. Collecting issues 26 to 34, this collection includes the rise of the legendary Brotherhood of Dada, the only team of super foes ever strange enough to rival the Doom Patrol itself. In Stock Trades remains your source for your collected edition needs. Thank you for your sponsorship, In Stock Trades and DCBService.com. And we will see you next week.
Bye. See, Sean, that's how you correct someone when they make a mistake. You say the proper print, so they can realize it. Not the way you do it, where you just snip at me and attack me. Thank you, Jamal, for doing that.
Hey, look, it took me. She had to tell me how to pronounce it. Okay, when I met her in San Diego, she had to tell me how to pronounce it. I didn't even know how to pronounce it.
You deserve everything you get. Anyway, back to Supergirl.
Right.
Okay.
I gotta
your pity party.
I take them when I can get them, man. Come on. I've had a bad day. I need at least one pity party.
Is that a bad joke? Can I get you a cookie?
Oh, thank you. See, thank you for the offer. So you
No
laughed,
problem.
but I know that was genuine and sincere.
It was. I hand you the cookie that I'm about to eat. So,
if we were in the same room, I would have taken it and eaten it. And said thank you. So I appreciate
sure.
the thought, man. I appreciate the thought.
No problem. Oh, don't you start me, Willie.
When Supergirl...
Brother can't give another brother a cookie. What's going on?
Hey, I'm still mad at you about your Hawkman drawing, so...
Oh, let it go, man. I owe you one.
That was a beautiful
remember?
drawing.
I owe you one.
Oh, I'm just teasing. You know I love your artwork anyway.
And for those of you who don't know, we may have somebody who doesn't realize this. Jamal did a beautiful, beautiful sketch for me of Nightwing beating the crap out of Hawkman. It was absolutely wonderful, just showing Hawkman just getting the stomp down on him, and I loved it.
Now, see, here's the way I look at it and rationalize that, and I'll explain this. This shows the talent of Jamal. He has a lot of range to him. He can go really realistic, like I was just talking about. We were talking about Supergirl's outfit and the little tiny details and things like that. But then he's not afraid to go fantasy when he needs to and really do it well. And I'm a fan of fantasy literature as well. So, I mean, it's one of those things where... And honestly, Jamal, all I can give you is nothing but compliments on your talent as an artist.
Oh, thank you.
He can always turn it around. No matter what, he can turn it around. Yeah.
You see, in that moment, see, Jamal and I just now hit up bonding.
Yeah. Well, it looks like I'll have to be done with podcasting because I am perfect at it.
It's a good thing I can edit. You didn't know you're not really on this episode, did you? It's like, and Sean has a wonderful interview with Jamal Igle. See, that's where I constantly improve.
You improve the show by editing me out. Oh, okay.
We actually have 3 other guys, Jamal. You haven't met them yet.